after she quarreled with her parents. The blonde adventure enthusiast decides to run away from home for the weekend and fully immerse herself in her favorite hobby. She approaches the building that sometimes looks like a palace, sometimes like a guild hall, and the attendant asks her to show her card and fill out an entry form for the palace. She climbs the ladder, her face focused and determined. Step by step she goes up. Suddenly, a giant entrance to a solo dungeon opens in the side of the rock, decorated with exquisite architecture. The structure majestically overhangs the slope of the Rocky Mountains, and suddenly it turns out, this is Sagu, a dungeon for beginners. This very place is for hunters and gatherers to earn some money, and those who have just become adventurers can gain experience here. The guild team firmly keeps the situation under control, so danger is almost non-existent. Even on the upper levels, exciting sightseeing tours are arranged. The girl notices there are plenty of people here who came just for entertainment, just like her. The worker asks if she wants to use the elevator, but she instead asks for a semi-rough card. No matter how many times she returns here, she can never get used to it. This place always reminds her that she is in another world. Just one step inside and a completely different magical pressure and atmosphere, unlike outside, immediately squeeze her. This exploration will last 2 days. She's going to descend to the lowest floor and set up camp there for the night, so she carefully reviews all the equipment, magical boots and a magic bag, as well as a tent, sleeping bag, food, water, and various enchanted tools. Manga has as many as 13 floors. There is also a transfer elevator that for 500 gold one way will take you directly to the 8th floor. From the 8th floor only on foot. She turns on the magical boots and decides the descent will be her warm-up. She was rushing down the corridor like the wind, at a crazy speed. In the background, another traveler calmly walks as if nothing happened. Then she rushes through the dungeon by a shortcut, and if she runs this route for about an hour, she can avoid almost all the monsters along the way. All thanks to her magical boots. Her body feels like a feather and fatigue hardly affects her. She rushes down the corridor, a huge creature flies past her like a storm. At the top of the stairs, another adventurer appears, while meanwhile small slimy creatures peacefully settle on the dungeon floor and do not even threaten her as she passes by. Finally, she reaches the deepest layer. Unlike the upper floors teeming with various monsters, the deepest layer of Sagu itself is one huge field dungeon. The landscape unfolds before her eyes. Appears a vast underground space, surrounded by mountains and stretching a dark forest that envelops what looks like a lake. Adventurers who want to earn this is exactly the place for you. Looking out at the view, she tensely checks her magic detector. Here the monsters are mostly weak, so even if you go alone, there is nothing to fear. She records the location of today's safe zone. They constantly move, so adventurers need to be vigilant and watch where they are now. There are few paths, so she can easily estimate where the creatures will pass. Wherever they go, by evening they will be very close. She decides to wait right here nearby. Every day the route and speed change, but their rhythm is so easy to guess. She quietly makes her way through the forest and settles in the tall grass. She lay on her stomach, weapon at the ready, like a huntress in ambush. She smoothly moves the sight across the forest, scanning every patch of terrain with a vigilant gaze. Her eye focuses intently, she looks carefully and waits. Suddenly movement catches her attention. A giant snake-like creature crawls out and slowly glides across the terrain. She recognizes the crun snake and is delighted. The catch is valuable. The meat is in high demand today. If it is large, it will be sold for a solid amount of money. After removing it, she carefully examined the body and noticed that it was an ordinary-sized specimen. She tries for the first time, and this is quite enough. She sits by the snake's body and knows, as long as her life is not in danger, it is customary in the dungeon to return everything she has hunted. Usually she just throws the prey into the bag and carries it straight to the Adventurers Guild. But the snake was so small that she decided to keep it for herself, rather than sell it. Sometimes she herself takes a knife, slaughters and processes monsters. The liver of the crun snake is a delicacy, and since it is easy to prepare for ordinary people, it is a real feast. If she slaughters it herself, everything will belong only to her. After processing the snake, she caught 3 bird-like monsters in the sky, and her large magical bag can hold even large combined items, so she decides to simply sell the birds as they are. Darkness slowly descends on the dungeon. She notices the right moment and retreats to a safe place. It turns out the safe zone is a giant turtle named Max Turtle, and Chan is a herbivorous creature that crawls 6 kilometers per hour. She is currently sleepy, a whole residential area is spread out on her back, and the guild is already selling goods from this creature. She climbs the stairs and finds herself on the turtle's back. The male adventurer loudly called her as a regular. He recognized the one who just knocked down an ordinary bird. He asks if she is really here permanently. She approaches, and several adventurers instantly appear around. One of them offers a trade, says he needs materials from an ordinary bird for a quest exam to raise the adventurer rank, and emphasizes that the safe zone is not only a place for rest and healing, but also a space where adventurers share news and trade. Nearby stands a female guild instructor who firmly says that trading during the rank exam should be prohibited, but another instructor replies that since it is part of the exam, he allows it. The dungeon is just a hobby for her, so she hardly engages in trading and negotiations. She values every opportunity to talk with other adventurers as a treasure and never misses it. She still cannot understand how it happened that in the end she got exactly that nickname. She came here so often that a clear mark from the tent remained even in her favorite spot. Give free rein to your finger, spread a like and subscribe to unearth even more hidden manga gems. And now I throw you a challenge. Comment, I am wildly delighted by this, I bet most of you. If you don't do this alright, let's move on. She breaks camp, takes out her fireproof and waterproof tent. Everything is ready. The tent stands firmly, the fire is lit, the sleeping bag is spread on the mat, the campfire burns, and 3 protective stones are placed around the perimeter. And next, dinner, liver that has just landed in her palms, and the vegetables she obtained. She carefully rinses the liver with clean water. Then slices it, throws it on the grill, generously sprinkles with salt and pepper, and places it among the vegetables. The finished dish is like gourmet burgers, perfectly cooked and already begging to be eaten. When it lies on the tongue, a springy but smooth texture is felt. The aftertaste is light, like chicken, completely without a wild flavor, wonderful with bread or fresh vegetables. It's not just tasty, it fills her with magic and soothes hunger so much that she feels as if she could eat this forever. Praise the underground meals. After dinner, she brews tea, lights a lamp, settles in comfortably, and slowly cleans her pistol, carefully taking care of her gear. She notices it would be too noisy at home, so the camp in the dungeon is the perfect place for this. Later, she suddenly slips off Mac's turtle while he rushes through the dungeon. Meanwhile, in the safe zone, the adventurers do not calm down. The dark-haired one says she looks like an experienced adventurer, and another shakes his head. A true veteran would not constantly go to such beginner dungeons. Someone else adds that they only see her once a week anyway, and after one adventure she feels more like an amateur than a real adventurer. The male adventurer could not get her out of his head. She has a strong foundation and solid knowledge. Even sea-level combat skills were quite enough. If she made it her profession, she would earn a lot. Meanwhile, at night, the giant Max Turtle calmly dozes in the dungeon, and the traveler cannot calm down from curiosity what kind of person she usually is and what she does. He cleans the rifle, puts out the fire, and sighing goes to sleep. The safe place is solid and shaky, an icy draft, and she hears monsters crying in the distance. The flies that light up the dungeon burn like tiny suns during the day, and at night they only flicker faintly. The real starry sky is nothing like the picture painted by artificial light. She quietly lies in her sleeping bag and looks up above the dungeon, spreads a real starry sky. The view is beautiful and calm, and she thinks to herself, the dungeon is truly a wonderful hobby. Morning comes and Max Turtle sets off again. The ground trembles under his steps. Suddenly she is gripped by horror. She realizes that she forgot the homework. She was sure in the morning she would quickly settle everything, go hunting once more, and return home. She sighs, what can you do, so she decides to return now. Leaving the dungeon, she walks to the Adventurers Guild to check out. She descends from. Max Turtle and other travelers wave to her in farewell. She brings the collected items to the ransom counter, and the guild worker gloomily says that lately the ransom rate has been very low, so this time there will probably be a loss. While the evaluation is ongoing, she washes all the dirt off herself in the public bathhouse. As soon as she replenishes supplies and receives her pay. At home, dressed in luxurious aristocratic attire, she slowly savors tea while the maid quietly works in the background. Meanwhile, her father is simply furious, shouting that it was a tea reception personally attended by the heir to the throne. If only she behaved properly, the position of his fiancée would not be an unattainable dream. He sternly tells her that she needs to be much more aware of her position. After all, she is the daughter of a count. She looks wildly irritated and terribly upset, thinking to herself that tomorrow the same boring school routine and those annoying noble gatherings will start again. Later that night, looking at her estate, she felt in her heart it would have been better to go to the dungeon. In Kransar Penso Goad is a giant serpent quietly lurking at the very bottom of the dungeon. Although it is venomless and moves slowly, it is the fiercest prey for adventurers. The generous meat of these creatures fills the bowls of commoners throughout the royal capital. In the palace, someone merely nodded and said briefly and dryly that they already knew this. Meanwhile, the skin and bones are processed into tools and household items, and the small liver, they say, is considered a delicacy by ordinary people. The main character is in the bath, and it is clear from him that he is obviously irritated about something. And then someone sharply shouted to Lady Florentina, "What are you even doing there?" She really peeks out from behind something in the palace, but you know what? Soup made from the skin and bones of the crayon serpent is simply incredibly tasty. When a skilled cook serving the nobles puts time and care into the preparation, the dish becomes a true delicacy. The servant stubbornly insists that it is only food for the servants and that the young lady will get nothing, even if it was prepared from souvenirs she brought herself. Another servant froze in panic. If the master finds out, it will be completely impossible. He simply cannot imagine the lady eating such cheap products. Meanwhile, the heroine is wildly rushing through the streets, armed and fully equipped. The heroine explains, on weekends she goes to the dungeon alone. It's her hobby. She simply loves hunting and camping in the initial dungeon of Sagu. Sometimes she immerses herself completely in one thing or another, and today she is fully devoted to camping. She plans to use her equipment to prepare a real delicacy at the camp, and she has a cool magic thermos that heats, cools, and boils. Expensive, but worth it. She will head straight to the safe zone on the lowest floor, and as soon as she finishes registration, quickly prepare all the ingredients before entering the dungeon. Later that night, sipping tea and admiring the view, she will leisurely enjoy clan snake soup while slowly cleaning her pistol. She's also preparing a thick, slow-cooked, hearty, creamy risotto. In the guild, an employee asks the heroine to show her card. She raises it. "I'm ready to set up a quiet camp deep inside the dungeon." He approaches the dungeon entrance and walks to the safe zone. The lowest level of the safe zone is on Max the turtle, very capricious, but her main prediction failed. The turtle turned out to be nowhere near where she expected. She realizes even if they wait, they won't get here for at least half a day, and she cannot understand why it had to break down on such a day. She decides to recharge mana, tries to pet Max Turtle, but in vain. Meanwhile, Florentina rides on Max Turtle straight into the safe zone, completely ignoring the monsters along the way. She has already gotten used to dodging and running on the upper floors. Finishing off enemies and collecting loot in the dungeon seems like an eternity, and there is an unspoken rule. Adventurers always return what they took, unless their life is in danger. Here she rushes. Her gaze caught something moving. A living creature appeared ahead. She thinks maybe it's a clan snake. Florentina boldly stands opposite Kamnari Vagma, a powerful monster from the initial dungeon saga, which appears only a few times a year. Before her towers a colossal bear-like creature. She sees a living specimen for the first time. It is a bearer of storms with a spawn level of 5. She lunges at the bear with a drawn sword, ready for battle, but Florentina hesitates. She heard that the beast's defense is not that strong, and if she hit a vital spot, she could quite possibly bring it down. She feels it to her very heart. First, they will have to dismantle it and extract the magic stone from there, otherwise the magic bag will simply burst. This creature is too powerful to storm directly. The equipment would break instantly. Meanwhile, thunder, bear's meat, and hides are true luxuries, and a flawless trophy could bring hundreds of millions, a rare prize that would make any adventurer cry with joy. But here is the thing, she has never cut such a huge bear, and searching for the magic stone would take the whole day, so there wouldn't even be time to eat. So she decides running away is her only way out. But in the end, she is just doing it as a hobby. First trait of the thunder bear, and it works. Inside, if someone runs, the creature sees prey in them and chases after them. Florentina flees when the huge bear growls and chases her through the dungeon. Here the second trait appears. Bear casts spells because a magical stone is hidden in its body. The monster hurls magical attacks and chases her. Florentina realizes there is no other way out, so she squeezes out mana to the last drop and strikes the approaching bear with all her might. After the fight, Florentina was breathless. During the rest, her magic almost ran out, and the safe zone is moving away. As soon as she catches her breath, she will rush forward. She has come this far, so now everything must work out. But the bear has caught her trail again. Its nose is sharp, and once it chooses a target, it will chase it throughout the dungeon. Florentina settled on a branch and watched as the creature prowled below. She realized that escaping in magical boots was no longer possible. One of them had already fallen off, and she tensed, preparing for what would come next. And Florentina lunges at the thunder bear and fights desperately. The giant creature roars, and it lunges at her with all its might. Arrows pierce its body. The fight intensifies. The bear's jaws snap fiercely, and she dodges and counterattacks. A brutal clash unfolds before their eyes between the traveler and the monster. Finally, the fight ends. Florentina stands victorious, though breathing heavily, and even after a point-blank shot to the head, this creature twitched for another 20 minutes. She circles the massive corpse, measuring the prey with a keen eye. The skin is full of holes, but it will be enough for 2 coats, over 100 kilograms of meat, and several kilograms of rare parts for medicine, a true giant. And somewhere inside this enormous body, she will have to find a magical stone the size of a ping-pong ball. Florentina pulls herself together and whispers to herself, "Focus, don't lose confidence." She will dismantle this thing piece by piece, using all her skills. The work begins. Hours drag on as she chops the huge bear, and her feet pace back and forth across the dungeon floor. While the day slowly passes, everything around her keeps changing relentlessly. Eventually, she collapses, completely exhausted after the grueling work. 4 hours of dismantling, 3 hours of walking to the safe zone, and the magical stone is nowhere to be found. Florentina sits there, utterly drained and drenched in sweat, barely managing to finish, with both magic and stamina nearly depleted. But first, she needs to wash her hands, make a fire, set up a tent and a stone barrier, and only then start on the meat. She set everything up, and finally it malfunctions. A bird sits nearby, and again he completely misses her. It was just an ordinary miss by a local beast. Meanwhile, Florentina has fainted and lies under the tent in the safe zone, unconscious. Other adventurers are already gathering around, and a familiar male adventurer notices her and asks what the tent over her head is. Another female adventurer sits down nearby and anxiously asks, "What's wrong? Was I unlucky yesterday?" Daytime, Florentina barely responds. It's almost noon, so it's no longer quite morning. But the rumor spread instantly. Other adventurers heard there was a witness yesterday, so they came down just in case. It turns out one of the trials at this rank's exam is to get the paw of a thunder grizzly, and it seems they already have it. Male adventurer's eyes widen. She felled the thunder grizzly. Florentina looks exhausted and irritated as soon as someone immediately starts bargaining and demands that she come up with something to trade within 2 weeks. She categorically refuses. There is nothing worthy for such a rare material, and the adventurer insists that if the prices match, negotiations are possible. Florentina has had enough. She really needs to leave now. She suggests settling the bill next week because this is an important dinner and she needs to return by 4 in the afternoon. She has plans in the evening. The adventurer man asks if she will go eat, and she freezes for a moment. But with a heavy heart, she confirms she must go. Then the adventurer man turned to Florentina. "Drinking the potion on an empty stomach is not good. Do you have something to eat right now?" Florentina lingers, her gaze on the bowl in her hands, and quietly speaks about the soup, crane, and snake. The group gathered around while she was preparing. Someone enthusiastically said that it amazingly retains heat and is nothing like what is sold in stores, and someone else added that it seems not very filling. Florentina tears dried meat into pieces and throws them into the bowl. The soup already contains dried vermicelli, dried wakame, and magical tofu. The adventurer man, with a slight smile, briskly explains how it is done. He tells her to pour the soup, season it with her favorite spices, and add that mitsuba from the dungeon they collected earlier. Cover with a lid and patiently wait 3 minutes. He says it should be ready by the time they clean up before she drinks the potion. After the meal, Florentina asks, where did he encounter the bear? The adventurer waved off her thanks and, smiling, said that the materials she brought from the bear are more than enough. Someone lit up with excitement because they realized there is still hope to find more. The adventurer warned that if bears appear in packs, the guild must be notified immediately. Then someone ordered others to immediately go and return the bowl to the guild registry table. Florentina holds the bowl and sighs. It could be much easier to enjoy this delicacy if I had just cooked and eaten the soup at home. She knows well, unexpected troubles come one after another, and the dungeon's danger constantly stands alongside everything else. She looks intently at the steaming bowl of noodles in front of her and gathers her courage. Then she throws herself at the food, and the adventurer man watches as she simply devours that bowl of soup. She slurps the noodles, enjoying every tasty moment. Florentina's face glows with true bliss as she eats from the bowl. Suddenly, a roar nearby knocks the whole group off their feet. The other adventurers panic. The adventurer man nervously breaks out in sweat, and someone shouts that there might still be a chance against the bear. But its simple food in the dungeon tastes incredible. Meanwhile, the loudspeaker blared and the announcement echoed, calling all adventurers to pay attention. A group of people in formal attire lined up at the table on behalf of the association that supports and helps adventurers of the royal capital. They decisively announced that from today they take this territory under their control. The Sagu Dungeon Procurement Department temporarily halts all monster purchases. Florentina stands nearby, clearly very displeased by this, and during this period the occupation remains in effect. The scene changes, showing Florentina's real way of life. On weekends, she lives for solitary dungeon trips, rushing through corridors, hunting monsters, and setting up camp. This is partly her hobby, but she is exhausted and finds it difficult, so she is used to accumulating a pile of small things. She keeps the rest in reserve and as souvenirs, and plans to sell the loot at the next opportunity. On the diagram, she is among a variety of dishes, and the arrows point directly at her. This shows a balanced diet of meat and vegetables, and this is exactly how she enjoys all this during her hobby on weekends. Suddenly, Florentina's magical bag started beeping warnings. There was little space, mana consumption spiked, and later it completely overflowed. She walks to the guild counter. Here she was supposed to sell her goods before entering the dungeon. But when she arrives, it turns out an unexpected takeover is happening here. It seems neither the staff nor the adventurers even look scared. Florentina decides to head to the reception register and ask what is going on. The guild worker with a headband smiled sincerely and asked in a friendly manner if this was her first time because she is here all the time. The guild worker explains that the Association for the Support of Adventurers of the Royal Capital is a union of adventurers themselves, their partners, and families, and several times a year they simply take over the guild's buyout department. Florentina looks confused when someone announces that the buyout of all monster materials and ores is suspended. When she asks how long this will last, the worker shrugs and replies, until they buy enough, usually about 3 days. Even though the buyouts were suspended, the guild worker still could not contain his joy, and explains that underground vegetables are still flying off the shelves. Now is the season of underground daikon and napa cabbage, so buyout prices are rising. They urgently need vegetables. The guild worker tirelessly repeats that adventurers only hunt and eat meat, and that he himself has stocked the guild's food supplies to the brim. Someone says that on the lowest floors vegetables grow by themselves, filled with magic and perfectly suitable for adventurers' dishes. At the mere mention of them, Florentina even jumps up. The worker continued, saying, "These underground vegetables grow in dark dungeons, not near the guild, so they are sold at the market for crazy money and are extremely hard to get. To avoid nutritional imbalance, the support committee regularly resorts to forced adjustments." The worker says people chase monsters for money, but no one will live forever eating only meat. He sincerely thanks Florentina for filling out the registration form. And with a shadow of sadness in her voice, she says that Florentina's rank is still E. The guild worker smiles and cheerfully takes out the rules about what to do when an E-rank adventurer enters a dungeon. While Florentina stands, swallowing every word, the male adventurer throws a question. Does she know the rule that if the guild decides, E-rank adventurers must go on designated reconnaissance and gathering missions under the guidance and supervision of an instructor? And Florentina instantly realizes. Essentially, this is kidnapping. Scene descends to the lowest level of the Sagu dungeon. Reinforcements arrive at the harvest site and the guild worker notices Florentina and calls her. Several adventurers hurriedly gather vegetables from the vast fields. Someone grumbles that no matter how much they gather, it will never end. The male traveler stopped, looked at the endless field of vegetables, and noticing that the soil was not even plowed here, explained. The vegetables from the dungeons reproduce with incredible force, and if left alone, even rare herbs will not be able to grow. Previously, herbivorous monsters peacefully nibbled the vegetables, but now even they can't keep up. The number of people hunting them has become too great. Florentina looks angrily when the traveling man warns, if the dungeon's balance breaks, it may cause panic and a crowd crush, and that will be a huge problem. The instructor looked sternly at Florentina and said, "As an adventurer of E-rank, don't think you have the right to refuse today or any human rights. You start by gathering everything one by one." Huge vegetable fields unfold before their eyes, spreading across the dungeon floor. The adventurer loudly explains to everyone how to properly harvest radishes. Grab the base of the leaves and pull the root is hidden in the soil. Florentina looks down at what she is holding, wonders is this really a radish, and then begins to pull. Meanwhile, a guild worker with a bandage curiously asks Florentina how to move the soil with a hoe. But Florentina is already holding a simply huge radish. Somehow she just pulled it out. The traveling man says that if it breaks, it will be impossible to buy such a one, so she should just take it with her, and Florentina stares at that giant radish and asks if the soil was too hard. Someone nearby, not hiding their surprise, said they never suspected the sister has such a strange weakness. Someone else smiled. It turns out the world is indeed well balanced. Florentina froze in shock. Her eyes seemed glued to the huge pile of gathered vegetables. The adventurer tells her, just because you are skilled with vegetables doesn't mean you lack talent for hunting. It's not about that at all, and adds that the guild is quite okay if you just join them. The instructor stands nearby in sunglasses, and around her flickers the same sparkling effect. Florentina called him, "Wait a second." The traveling man nods to her in response and immediately asks if she could soon take on a certain task. Florentina quietly thanks him. The stage slowly descends to the lowest floor into the safe zone, where this gigantic herbivore peacefully dozes. The instructor says this place, like the procurement department, is also occupied. She explains half of the vegetables they buy are immediately processed into preserves. The space is filled with jars of preserves. Notices that food processed in the dungeon lasts much longer, and its taste and magic are better, while most of the preserves sold in the guild are actually made by the support association. The traveling man says that they cannot survive on vegetables alone, so they simultaneously prepare food for the boys working downstairs. Then the adventurer man asked Florentina to go hunting to get meat for food or something quick, say snakes. He adds that it is probably easier for her to work with the land than to hunt. The instructor notices with surprise, Florentina actually cares about her abilities, although it previously seemed that she did not care. The shot pulls back, revealing a wide view of the dungeon, and the adventurer thinks, for adventurers it's normal to play to their strengths and divide roles by professions. Florentina is indeed good at something. In the forest stands a strange creature. Blooming branches grow from its horns, and the entire landscape seems hidden in fog. She lunges at the deer and plunges the blade into it. Watched it eat and estimated the size, so there should be enough meat. Suddenly something clicked in Florentina. She understood. Her beaver monsters greedily devoured the vegetables that had grown too large. Close up, the eye of a deer and her blade in the moment of the strike. But the deer does nothing but calmly graze on the extra vegetables until suddenly it bolts and rushes into the forest. Florentina watches the creature run into the distance and suddenly realizes they managed to escape. But someone quietly whispers to Florentina, "Do not hunt these creatures, the season is currently closed." Meanwhile, another worker calls to her, "Come over and help tend the tree instead." The worker says that nature is designed so that everything goes smoothly, but sometimes, especially when humans interfere, it malfunctions. Then someone has to intervene and keep everything moving, and he asks her to remember this. Florentina looks closely and thoughtfully thinks, if the tree dies, these creatures will be left without their food source. She says that such purely protective work is not quite her style, but it makes her ponder difficult things. Later, Florentina carried a huge pile of radishes gathered earlier, feeling them digging into her shoulders. She thinks about what she has learned. If they do not hunt the monsters, the balance will fall. The monsters will crawl out of the dungeon and rush in crowds, and restraining this delicate and difficult task is incredibly hard. And suddenly her magical bag lit up a warning. There was almost no storage space left. And Florentina suddenly realizes this is the real reason for her problem. Before puzzling over the complex ecology of the dungeons, she first needs to clear out her overflowing inventory. Florentina flamboyantly puts on sunglasses, and behind her stands a man adventurer. Workers anxiously ask, "What happened to that young lady?" The traveler explains, "She said she apparently caught nothing. Those vegetables they are looking at turned out to be leftovers from her magical bag, which she told them to use as they wished," and the workers are simply stunned by how much she managed to gather in such a short time. One of them remarked as if saying, "I will try to hunt a little more." The man traveler and Florentina stood over the pile of gathered vegetables, and he mentally decided, valuing the dungeon and simultaneously working on oneself is a sign of a true adventurer, or at least so it seemed to him. Meanwhile, someone whispers that they heard. Florentina supposedly treats adventures as a hobby, although no one really knows this, and another person adds if instructor Roman is so interested in her, then she has a bright future ahead. Later, the instructor sincerely thanks everyone who stayed so late, and happily says that there is plenty of food, so eat as much as you want. While in the background, a giant herbivorous creature peacefully dozes. Preparations are in full swing. On the table are dishes made from Florentina's vegetables: tender stewed daikon, pepper fried with meat and napa cabbage, and quick pickled vegetables. The workers greedily rush to the food and praise it. One exclaims that the daikon absorbed so much flavor. Another says meat and Chinese cabbage are a perfect pair. The third worker smiled and noted that lightly pickled vegetables really refresh the taste wonderfully. Florentina thoughtfully chooses what to eat. The vegetables in the dungeon unexpectedly seem tasty to her, and suddenly she realizes, probably for the first time, she really thought so. The vegetables, although well baked, still pleasantly crunch, and the taste is delicate. The meaty richness perfectly combines with the vegetables. Next to her sits an adventurer man who throws into the conversation. In the club of enthusiasts, there are many people who truly love to cook. Florentina says that she does not even intend to raise her rank, but somewhere in her soul she still dreams of joining one of such events again someday. The adventurer man smiles and tells her that even those adventurers who have the highest rank join every time only for the food. Someone energetically discusses the correct balance of the dungeon, another suggests pork miso soup, and Florentina sadly admits that she still does not fully understand all these complex things. She eats from the bowl and quietly thinks that she will start trying to enjoy meat and vegetables in balance. Later, thanks to the efforts of E-rank adventurers, the exchange point reopened again the next day at noon. Florentina holds another full pot of damaged vegetables and sadly realizes that she is still very far from balancing everything correctly. Shots flash one after another while Florentina talks about her hobby solo dungeon trips. She smiles and says that visiting there on weekends to relax has become almost a tradition for her. Then the scene changes, they show her daily life, and someone asks what she is busy with these days. Papers and announcements with the final exam schedule literally cover the walls, and nearby someone snorts, "Pharmacy is too broad, it's impossible." Florentina says she has completely immersed herself in studying, and a note hangs with a warning. The practical magic test will take place at the beginning of next week. Florentina sits in her room and explains that this weekend she will take a break from hobbies and finally truly study for the test. She received a fail on the midterm only because she can't cast spells, and honestly, that's just a total bummer. Books lie around her and she notices that the practical instructor is overly strict, but surprisingly nowadays many nobles have magical power and yet don't even know how to cast spells. She feels she needs to come up with some plan. Suddenly a maid enters carrying tea. The maid says that everything is fine with Florentina's teachers. Even if she fails the practical exam, the main thing is a good final grade. The master won't scold her, and in response Florentina makes strange sounds like a cicada. The maid curiously asks if that is some new cicada or something similar. But the maid says that if she fails, she will just have to attend extra lessons in the summer, and Florentina immediately exclaims that this is exactly what she most wants to avoid. She reflects on her summer plans and notes. So many things she wants to live in the Sagu dungeon or rush to explore a new dungeon, and to not fail anything, she asks the maid to also include tea parties and summer vacations in the schedule. The servant gently and tenderly offers Florentina to rest a little. After all, if she pushes herself too hard, it will only harm her. She notices that the other exams have already ended anyway. Florentina thoughtfully considers this, and she agrees that there is no point in worrying forever about what she does not understand. She decides that maybe it is really worth resting a bit and repeats to herself, just a little, only a small break. Suddenly the scene shifts to the guild. Behind the reception appears a new girl with a bob haircut and a raised eyebrow asking if Florentina is the same regular lady because she said she would not come this weekend. Suddenly Florentina felt her legs carry her straight to the guild, although she thought to rest a bit before returning, and the guild worker just asked her to wait a little at the reception. Florentina resists and firmly states that she will not go to the dungeon today, but the workers are already pinning something on the board. On the page proudly shines the inscription RTA. This is the abbreviation for real-time attack ranking. The guild worker says here they hold competitions in the dungeons. There is an endurance division and a magic division where people compete for speed, who enters the dungeon and returns the fastest, and right now the heroine of this country is first in both, practically challenging everyone. Florentina understands this, she is simply unreal. Meanwhile, the guild worker with a headband lays out how the RTA divisions work. The endurance division forbids any magic and is wildly popular, only pure strength and equipment remain there, but it turns out to be incredibly difficult, and Florentina processes this new information, realizing that RTA is a real thing that people actually engage in. She asks about the magic department, her voice burning with curiosity. The employee adds that top players complete it in less than 3 hours, and even unrated participants take a little over 5 hours. In the guild, a female employee with a headband joyfully announces that Florentina will conduct training, and the adventurer man asks in surprise, wasn't she supposed to come this weekend? Suddenly, a prompt pops up on the screen. Does she want to take a tutorial from the instructor? 2 buttons, yes and no, and someone clicks one of them. The tutorial begins to explain the RTA strategy. First, choose a route without hesitation and avoid encounters with monsters as much as possible, then make a plan that exactly matches your stamina and mana reserves. Suddenly, a message popped up on the screen. Instructor Tudoliano has finished the training demonstration. The instruction warns, if you run out of mana on the way, you won't reach the goal at all. The adventurer man whispered to Florentino that she knows this dungeon like the back of her hand, so now the main thing is how she distributes stamina and mana, especially since mana potions are weak. Talk to him when you are ready. Florentino thinks to herself. She has never really run to the 8th floor, but the map and all abbreviations are clear as day, so she decides to allocate her strength about 20 for the descent, 50 on the lower floor, and 30 for the way back. Guild employee decisively tells her, "Go ahead." The attack began, the timer jumped to 0, Florentino broke ahead, and the adventurer man and guild workers froze and watched from the starting zone. On the upper floors, the monsters are only slimes, so she just rushes forward, and in the tight human crowd, she activates magical boots at 60 power. The timer shows 24 minutes 9 seconds, she increases the power to 80 and knows for sure. The real challenge begins from the 8th layer. Florentina breaks forward along a familiar route which she knows by heart, determined to shorten her time. Usually it takes an hour, but today she will manage in just half an hour. A modest mountain relief of the lowest level emerges on the stage. Because the run is long, at the 49th minute and 52nd second she needs to take a proper break. She catches her breath a little. At the lowest level there are many dangers, so she will have to carefully check the route and safe zones, and meanwhile Florentina adjusts her gear during the break. As soon as the clock shows 1 hour, 1 minute and 28 seconds, she announces the end of the break and instantly rushes straight to the center. She faces a choice. If she tries to go the shortest way through the lowest layer, she will have to break through an area without paths, where around there are only trees and stones. And the monsters that hide and live right in this area will become much more, and each such encounter will force her to take a large detour. Suddenly Florentina notices a clan snake nearby and immediately decides what to do. The snake is calm, so it is unlikely to chase them, and she firmly says she will not repeat the same mistake again. Because if they had defeated it, it would have taken a lot of time. Camera shifts and before us appears the heart of the lowest floor of the Sagu dungeons. The giant glowing core of the dungeon dominates the entire landscape. The timer mercilessly counts down 1 hour 35 minutes 42 seconds, and instructions appear on the screen. When it reaches the core, extend your participant badge. The goal is achieved as soon as the color of the magic stone completely changes to bright red. Florentina believes the safe zone is over there, but if they rush there, they will have to detour a bit. She sternly warns, a break in the central zone is dangerous. She refuses and rushes forward. Florentina speeds to the entrance of the lowest level as if without brakes. Later, near the entrance that led to the lowest level, the timer shows 2 hours, 2 minutes and 33 seconds, and Florentina estimates that the journey here took a little over 2 hours. The way back is all uphill, so returning is mostly safe. She hesitates to drink a potion to shorten the rest because she thinks about another hour and then she will manage. Florentina dashed upward at full speed, rushing the same path she descended to reach the 8th level. She tears her way through the 7th layer, the 6th layer and the 5th floor, bypassing slimes. At 2 hours 43 minutes 56 seconds, she finally reaches the 3rd layer, only a little left. Florentina estimates her pace and suddenly realizes, if she keeps it up, she can finish in less than 3 hours. And then reality hits. Her body seems to refuse to move. She feels sick, her legs hurt. The skirt is tight, and even her shoulders are painfully squeezed under the bag. Suddenly she is gripped by horror. She realizes that the mana has run out. Florentina sits completely exhausted and desperately racks her brain looking for a way out of this mess. She has already drunk the potion, so the mana elixir will not work. She remembers being told about the balance between mana and endurance and warned, be careful. Then a traveling man appears and asks what she is doing on the upper floors. Someone whispered to him, you just have to hear this. Meanwhile, the adventurer explains his situation. The instructor dumped the clearing of the upper levels on him supposedly. Endurance is enough, and yes, they pay well for the day, but that place is just ridiculously large. Then the conversation shifts to Florentina's situation. Someone throws into the conversation, Discovery writes 30. The adventurer looks embarrassed, but another explains in simple words it means she can take 30 of everything in the bag as a reward for the discovery, and the group freezes when they realize what that really means. Meanwhile, Florentina rapidly assesses her strength. There is still a little endurance left, but magical energy is completely gone. Ahead of her are still 2 floors. She has already cleared the 3rd and approached the stairs. Even if she doesn't get a perfect score or even fails, as long as her legs still move, she can still do something. If she can still run, it means something can still be done. Florentina rushes forward with pure, unwavering determination. She just wants not to fail. Now the dungeon entrance appears in her field of vision. Just a little more, just a bit. Florentina crosses the finish line and collapses near the guild entrance. The timer shows 3 hours, 18 minutes, and 40 seconds. Someone is celebrating her finish, and another shouts that this is a record. Next to her sits a male adventurer, and Florentina lies exhausted on the ground, saying that her magic lasted only halfway. A woman from the guild runs up and, beaming, joyfully exclaims that for first time this is incredible, although she didn't make the ranking, but suddenly freezes mid-sentence, confused. To call her sister. Fatigue is painted on Florentina's face. Her lungs and heart hurt. Magic is gone. She feels nauseous. Her bare feet are completely numb. She wonders how long it has been since she last ran so far without any magic. A thoughtful silence falls over the scene. Florentina contemplates what just happened. Her thoughts clear up. Her head seems crystal clear, and a breeze touches her skin incredibly gently. Suddenly, she is overwhelmed by confusion. Why did she even come back to the guild? Later in the guild, a maid met Florentina at the entrance, smiled broadly, greeted her, and remarked that it had been a long break. Someone asked if it was all a futile effort, but the maid said she prepared it only because she believed it would help Florentina study better, and Florentina honestly admitted. Yes, she just wanted to rest a little from preparing for the tests. Then the maid brings a wonderful handmade fruit sandwich, generously spread with homemade cream. Lights immediately sparkled in Florentina's eyes. She tastes it and the flavors seem to enliven her. The cream and bread are airy and juicy, and the sugar with a hint of sourness is absorbed directly into her overloaded body. She says as expected that today she will just take a bath and go to sleep right away. The maid asks with curiosity in her voice whether Florentina is preparing for the practical magic exam. Rumor has it Florentina supposedly said she graduated from their school with fairly good grades, right? And another comment emphasizes that the maid is here only because of the low rank of her title. The maid whispered a simple piece of advice to Florentina. The midterm exam was only on magic, so the final will definitely be mixed both magic and magical instruments. If Florentina reviews the practical reports once more and finally grasps how those magical devices behave, she can definitely achieve a passing score. She just needs to practice basic mana control. The thing is, if someone decided to take on the challenge, it's quite natural to first come up with a strategy. Florentina bitterly regrets not asking the maid about this earlier. Honestly, instead of endless pondering, just take a break and clear your head. Maybe that's how the breakthrough will come. When the weekend arrived, the teacher stepped forward with papers in hand and announced the content of the practical final magic exam. It will be necessary to use both magic and magical instruments. Scene changes, the facade of a building appears on the screen, and as soon as the announcement sounds, chaos instantly erupts around. The exam is a 195-kilometer race. Those who do not finish within the time limit fail immediately, and one student proudly claims to have been first in the entire cohort by a huge margin. Students all over the classroom are in panic. Some scream that they can't endure it, others plead with the teacher to compromise and shorten the distance by about 50. Everyone shouts that they are scared and don't want to do this. Meanwhile, Florentina announces her hobby with a smile, exploring dungeons independently. And this weekend, she again abandons household chores and enthusiastically sets off to explore the beginner's dungeon. This time, she will first set up camp in a safe zone and start bird hunting. The note explains, safe zone was shortened to Anchai from Anzan Chidai. Seeing Florentina and other adventurers bustle about, preparing to set out on an expedition. But in the dungeon, a male adventurer standing next to slimy creatures announces that the safe zone is temporarily closed. The postal adventurer loudly warned, until the repairs are finished, no one is allowed on the lowest F-rank floor. Even those from E-rank and above should better return if they are not confident. Frame stops on the damaged spot. It will heal in 2 to 3 days. They say yesterday some fool got drunk, started a fight, and eventually began throwing magic randomly. In the guild, a male adventurer in glasses persistently warns, the thief is still hiding somewhere on the lowest floor. Meanwhile, a guild employee loudly calls everyone ready to take the quest to catch him. Come on, and he adds, if you see him, immediately inform the guild. Suddenly someone roared about their uncle, and immediately an invitation to a meet-and-greet evening surfaced. They showed good couples and their connections to the royal family, and Florentina is already thinking about going home and grumbling about some after-party with a lady. She thoughtfully runs through her hobby in her mind and whispers to herself, safety above all, even if it's just entertainment. Other adventurers froze in panic upon seeing that someone had brought children with them, and began asking if this person really intended to lead them into the dungeon. One male adventurer insisted that it would be a good experience, while others shouted for him to stop. It's dangerous here. Suddenly, Florentina remembers. A male voice says that everyone can create their own protection, and her uncle, her grandfather's or grandmother's brother, who also often repeated this, comes to mind. Filled with enthusiasm, she seized this idea, loudly exclaimed about safety, and decided to try. Maybe she would even catch one herself. Meanwhile, a dungeon map suddenly appears at the bottom of the panel. Two simple camp spots are visible. The first lies at the very bottom, outside any safe zones. In fact, it is a wide cliff where monsters find it hard to sneak up, and if something goes wrong, you can instantly get to the upper level. But there is a catch. There is frantic movement there, so you really can't relax. There is another option to enter the sanctuary office, which is like a lid over the heart of the dungeon, and wait out the rain in the lounge. But the problem is that advanced monsters or mutants are very likely to swarm there. On the dungeon map, a plan suddenly emerges. The entrance to the lowest level is brightly highlighted, and the resting place on the cliff is again marked as a convenient escape route. But again, heavy traffic is the main downside. The sanctuary area near the dungeon core, although it provides shelter, is windy and dangerous. Monsters constantly appear there, and Florentina admits that she would usually choose the first option. But then she says with a sparkle in her eyes that she recently came across an interesting place and is already heading to the cave entrance hidden among the underground passages. Florentina enters the cave and examines the tiny entrance, but as soon as she steps inside, she is genuinely surprised. How is it so spacious here if the entrance outside is so narrow? Looking around, she suddenly noticed several strange details scattered throughout the cave. Air holes were everywhere, even on the sleeping platform. The platform was carved directly into the rock, a bed for sleeping. And there even stands a stone circle just right for a campfire. Florentina sees that people still come here, but the traces of the fire have already faded with time, so it is unlikely that they were left by that very suspect. Then she notices there are many more fire pits, and the firewood is arranged quite differently than last time. Having examined the setup, she suddenly realizes the safe zone in Sagu was created 50 years ago, so this camp hideout must have been built even earlier. Without hesitation, she gets to work and immediately stretches a rope net over the entrance from improvised materials found in the cave. With a determined expression, Florentina loudly says that it is time to start setting up the security system. Then Florentina carefully wraps the rope net at the cave entrance with vines herbs that repel monsters. After that, she lights a fire and throws several dry grassy vines into it. The smoke carries the scent of herbs that monsters hate, while people only say it smells a bit like grass. Meanwhile, Florentina also turns on a loud sound, driving away nearby monsters, although she says it might be unpleasant for people. While the fire burns, she tells herself, a responsible adult never takes their eyes off the fire. With low-level monsters in Sagu, this works quite well, except that the prey sometimes escapes. Florentina guts the catch, reviews the day's results, and suddenly realizes the scent of an S-class monster scares away others. So she wraps the entrance to the cave from the inside with white wolf fur. And now time to cook. Today's menu: black bread and bird, baked with aromatic herbs. Florentina is preparing shashlik meat, generously rubbed with fragrant spices and fresh herbs. Now slowly roasted over the campfire on low heat. The oil is a bit heavy, but it seems it will reveal itself better with softer bread. The taste is sweet, salty, rich, and full. The herbs take away the smell, and the meat turns out crispy and juicy. The sun was already setting, so she waved her hand. Today she will just sleep and postpone cleaning the pistol until tomorrow. As soon as Florentina settled down, she suddenly realized there is no sleeping bag or blanket, and she also forgot the barrier stone. Night fell on the dungeon, covering it with a dark cloak. The cave hid in the folds of the earth like a secret, and inside Florentina's fire flickers. On the stone platform she sleeps, wrapped in her gear. Meanwhile below, 3 armed adventurer men sneak through the dungeon. Travelers notice the cave, and one of them suggests robbing the one inside. After all, it turned out that there were indeed people here. The dark-haired one began to growl in outrage. Because of some petty fight, they are being equated with criminals. These bastards treat C-rank guys as if they were their criminals. Companion chimed in, "We can just exchange the loot for money, leave this country, re-register as adventurers somewhere else and earn there." Suddenly they noticed that cheap barrier stone, and someone shouted, "Hold it as far away as possible, it's of no use." Another says that sounds good and suggests having some fun because it seems she is a woman. Suddenly one of the adventurers crushes the barrier stone under his boot and with cold contempt calls them trash adventurers for a trash dungeon. Fight breaks out. Florentina, lying on the ground, shoots with a pistol. A bullet hits one of the criminal adventurers, throwing him back. The dark-haired criminal draws a sword, and the male traveler stands at a distance. Anxiety is frozen on his face. Emotions reflected all over his face. Florentina swears in response while the attackers rush at her. Then, holding the pistol and with a stern expression, she wraps something up. And suddenly the trap triggers a rope net, grabs two criminal adventurers and suspends them in the air. They writhe and try to break free. Some lose consciousness, but Florentina skillfully avoided all vital spots. Even if it is self-defense, killing later can bring a lot of trouble, so she just thinks she is already used to aiming at monsters' weak spots. Meanwhile, Florentina hangs the criminals on the ventilation in their makeshift shelter. She says they are unlikely to escape or fly away immediately, but the net was taken from the trash, so whether it will hold is a big question. Suddenly, a signal flare shoots into the sky in the distance. Immediately, several adventurers throughout the dungeon notice this, and one of them suddenly recognizes it as a rescue signal flare. Finally, the rescue team arrives at the bivouac cave. The wounded adventurers are already being examined and treated, and the criminals are still caught in the net. Someone sincerely thanks the ordinary CIS for help. The male adventurer tells Florentina that if she files a report, her contribution to the guild will increase. Maybe she will even rise in rank without an exam, and the reward for their capture will grow. Florentina waved it off. Don't worry, it's all right, but the note clearly stated that she was forever E-rank. Meanwhile, other adventurers with a sparkle in their eyes inspect the cave shelter. Someone asks if Florentina made this place, but she remains silent. Another cannot stand it and asks then who did. The male adventurer with a spark in his eyes explains, this is a bivouac in the dungeon. The male adventurer explains a little. There are many dungeons scattered around the world and none of them have a safe corner. In such dungeons, bivouacs and shelters are found. Adventurers for years, by trial and error, built them, and sometimes you come across remnants of those days when Sagu did not yet have a safe zone. A wide shot shows the dungeon with scattered old shelters. He continues to explain that once a safe zone appeared, everyone simply stopped using them and call it the forgotten wisdom of the ancestors. One adventurer skeptically asks if anyone still uses these shelters. Another laughs no, but that adventurer corrects them. In fact, quite a few eccentrics simply refuse to use safe zones. The guild knew several such places, but this shelter really looked like a newly made discovery. Meanwhile, Florentina thought to herself, if someone makes a hobby out of dungeons, taking care of safety is just obvious. The adventurer says, everyone approaches dungeons in their own way, so does she. Everyone makes things safe in their own way and enjoys it, and Florentina seems to have many ways ahead of her that she doesn't even suspect. And the traveler says he will try once more to use this place himself and look for a few other spots. He asks if that wire trap is her own invention, and she, smiling awkwardly, admits that she completely forgot. She said another one. The preview hints that next time Lady Tina will somehow join the nobility's tea party. Meanwhile, Florentina begins her little ritual. She madly loves solitary dungeon trips, and the greatest joy is to throw on her favorite gear and go explore the first levels. In the frame, her gear hanging in the closet is visible: the traveler's cloak, a magic bag, worn boots, and a sword. Below shimmer luxurious, noble items. A luxurious fan, a shining dress with intricate patterns, and an elegant white dress. All these were just symbols of that noble life into which she was forced. Florentina appears like a true noble lady, in a luxurious white dress with fur trim and holding a decorative fan. She thinks indignantly how that vile old man decided everything for her without even asking, while noble ladies surround her, praising Lady Florentina and asking if her dress is a new summer model from the trading company. In the unfolded illustration, Florentina in a full noble dress is terribly irritated, and in the background her dungeon gear, boots, bag, and sword all crossed out. The scene opens with a lavish garden reception at the heir's estate. Nobles in ceremonial attire wander the well-kept alleys, and Florentina knows this is his evening, so for now she must play the role. She has already greeted everyone, so before the heir arrives she will settle in a corner and nibble on sweets. Suddenly she comes across a luxurious display of chocolate products by the royal confectioner, and their craftsmanship mesmerizes her. She gazes enchanted at the impeccably arranged treats on their tray. Florentina tastes the chocolate and enjoys it. A delicate sweetness spreads inside as the melting chocolate flavor hits the spot, and she thinks sugar is the best. Her thoughts naturally drift to quiet tea time in a safe zone after hunting or something similar. The fruit sandwich from that store was incredible, and what they had after RTA was also insanely tasty. When she finally goes to that tea time, reality takes over in the end. She always wants salty much more than sweet. She sincerely admits that she does not know how to brew tea at all, and someone says that for real tea she needs a bunch of utensils. Meanwhile, below the scene, nobles chat. Someone suggests going next week, another agrees we must definitely go, and Florentina mentally feels that just the thought of it somehow pulls her toward the dungeon. Suddenly, it is announced that the crown prince has arrived. A young handsome man entered amid sparks and fanfares, and behind him came another figure. Nobles immediately began guessing. Someone asked if it was a hero, another confirmed that yes, the one behind is the hero. In a small frame, Chibai Florentina stands colorfully among other gentlemen and ladies and obediently responds when the heir to the throne approaches her directly, calling her the daughter of Count Trenmel, Lady Florentina G. Trenmel, and asks if she is the same girl they talked about. Florentina politely answers, and she frankly admits a lot of time has passed, but her father was always very kind to the prince. The crown prince asks if she recognizes this person, pointing with his hand to the hero nearby, and Florentina falls into a deep bow, not knowing how to respond at all. The story somewhat clarifies the hero's past. It turns out that 10 years ago an anomalous cluster appeared in the eastern high-level dungeon, and from there a calamity-class monster broke out, the one called the Demon King. At that moment, the hero suddenly appeared out of nowhere, and the scene instantly flipped into a dramatic flashback, silhouettes of adventurers fighting against this giant demon. The hero, together with companions, defeated the Demon King and pacified the entire crowd. Even now, he travels through the most dangerous dungeons in the country to prevent panic and crowding, constantly earning his name through explorations and victories over monsters. In the final panel, he is shown in action in full combat gear, fighting creatures. He is a hero for their entire people. Meanwhile, the crown prince introduces the hero to the nobles at a garden party, and one of them explains that although he is a good, loyal man and father of 3 children, he is still insanely popular with women. Suddenly, someone recalls that his name is on the RTA leaderboard of the Sagu cave and that he recently broke the record. One noble wonders why the hero would even be in some beginner dungeon, and another noble lady picks up, saying she should introduce herself. Someone introduces everyone to a man, an S-rank adventurer who was once in their party. Roman Z. Geller smiles and winks at Lady Trenmel, implying that she was the one who made him participate. Florentina says with a smile that she specially invited him to meet the hero, but others quickly ask her to be quiet. Roman quietly admits, due to an injury, he had to end his career, so now he works in the guild in the royal capital. Even before officially introducing himself to the group, someone muttered that everyone in the guild said supposedly she is the daughter of a merchant or an official, because every time she appears, she is so neat and cleanly dressed. Someone else picked up, never would have imagined that Florentina was once in the hero's squad, and now even a noble lady. The woman noticed that with such a surname Trenmel, Florentina's strength makes sense. Roman says he heard a story about the daughter or maybe the sister of the leader of the Hunters clan. He tells that in the lands of Trembla there is a dungeon for the upper class, the only one in the country that is truly maintained, and the clan that has ruled it for generations is connected by marriages to the lord's family. Florentina sighed. Maybe it's fate we met right here. Roman smiled. I knew, and she added that it would have been her grandmother. Roman quietly whispered that the higher ranks are already aware and asked Florentina to keep her mouth shut. She agreed and in response asked him not to talk about her either. Roman explains to his colleagues, and everyone else does not even suspect who he really is. Meanwhile, Florentina mentally imagines how people will soon start treating her differently. Not that she really tries to hide that she is a noblewoman, she admits that she really hates it when people suddenly start behaving differently. But as soon as they find out that she was in the hero's squad, that's when everything goes awry. She decides if this becomes known, there will be nothing but trouble. Florentina stands there and it is clear, she is obviously irritated. Suddenly the sister calls out to Roman, why flirt so rudely with the young lady in the corner? Come here, we have something interesting. Roman thanks her and Florentina thinks that he really is saving her. Scene changes. Before us appears Darth's equipment. They say the heir to the throne brought darts to kill time, but this pastime never really caught on. A noblewoman playing with the target notes that the hero seems to lack time for all this. Roman asks Florentina one more round for old time's sake. She replies that even if she agreed, it makes no sense. Roman beams with joy as he asks Lady Trenmel if she would like to join. Someone noticed that when she is scheming, she always has that expression. Excitement buzzed around whether she is rich, whether she is his type, or if he finally decided to marry, but Florentina answered briefly and coldly no, and then someone shouted that the crown prince, his highness, is calling the hero. Amid the murmur of the garden party, one nobleman hopefully asks another if there is any progress, and the other awkwardly apologizes, says he is not in the game, and asks, have fun without him. The dart flies into the target, and someone with a slight smile says that this is exactly the way to pass the time. Florentina clenches the dart in her hand and admits, a little shyly, that she has never played darts before. Someone quietly tells her, "Don't worry, the hero and everyone else are so busy courting the crown prince that no one pays attention to some small game in the corner." Roman smiles and says to Lady Trenmel, "Come on, don't hold back." The dart dramatically hits the target. Roman suggests taking it seriously. Someone asks if she can do it. Florentina replies, "So how about this?" Roman leaned over and whispered in the ear, "If she beats him, he will quietly tell about the secret passage from the 8th to the 12th floor, the very one known only to the highest-ranking adventurers and senior guild officers." Florentina thinks, here it is, the very hidden path they could never find, no matter how much they searched. She retorts, if he loses, she will pretend to be training and dump a bunch of annoying errands on him. Roman, challenging, smiles and says, "But if she loses, she will have to go through his training instead." He asks, "What will come of this?" Florentina asks if he knows the rules of darts, and someone smilingly notes, "The highest score is not in the center." 2 darts have already stuck into the dartboard. On the scoreboard, 130 points are brightly flashing exactly for Florentina G. Trenmel, and nearby the scoring breakdown is visible. Roman exclaimed excitedly, "That's what I was talking about." Suddenly his result lit up on the scoreboard, 130 points. He tells her, "Don't stop, there are still 7 rounds ahead." The tension between the opponents grows from round to round. In the second, both score 310 points, and in the third, again 310 each. The exchange of blows does not subside. It wildly continues in the 4th and 5th rounds. None of them manage to break ahead. Until the 7th round, the darts scoreboard seems to shout a draw. Each has 1,210 points. In the final round, Florentina thinks that at least she won't lose and calculates if she manages to score the highest points again by hitting the triple 20 twice. But her face instantly froze in shock. 2 darts are already stuck in the dartboard, both in the triple 20. Roman laughs and says, as always, she fails at the most important moment. The final count shows 1,350 points for the 8th round, and only 20 points remain. Roman confidently says he will go straight in the middle, adding, if he doesn't get less than 20 he will win, and maybe even ask for a question where he can still win from the center. The dart hits and shows 20. Florentina stammers, doesn't believe it. The scoreboard shows 1,350 points, and then someone approaches and, addressing the heir to the throne, asks if they are interrupting something. Roman's expression instantly changes when someone urgently says he needs to return to the guild immediately, as if a magical device detected an anomaly, and someone from the underground guild Sagu is already waiting at the entrance to the place. Roman says that something must have happened in the dungeon since they came all the way to the royal castle just for him. Florentina sincerely apologizes to the heir to the throne and is the first to leave, and downstairs she froze in shock when Roman, apologizing and gently calling her sister, says they will continue this next time. Meanwhile, near the guild entrance, someone loudly calls Instructor Roman. He immediately rushes forward, and someone is already shouting, "What happened?" And she will not be able to get the card. They will lead her to the very end. Suddenly, Florentina notices that her guild card. "Sorry to interrupt your rest, but the guild master ordered an immediate return." The guild member continues, "The guild leader urgently summoned all adventurers of the capital. People are already injured." Magical device suddenly detected an anomaly right in the core. Florentina's and Roman's faces instantly darkened when they learned that panic and a crush had broken out in the dungeon. Then on the transition page appears a llama with a sign, happily urging everyone to move to the next page. At the garden party of the crown prince in the royal castle, the hero approaches the prince and asks where Roman is. The heir to the throne informed him, an official report just arrived from the guild. A panic crush broke out in the Sagu dungeon. He asks the hero to talk with the president of the support association and be ready to leave at any moment just in case, although he notes that with a rating of 335 this is unnecessary. The hero thought to himself, Sagu is a dungeon for beginners, so probably it's not his turn to enter. Meanwhile, someone is sounding the alarm. If we don't take this under control, the faction against the suburb will become too arrogant. Someone else asks, where is Lady Trenmel? They were told that she suddenly felt unwell, so she already went home for today. The scene changes before us. Appears the entrance to the dungeon, carved directly into the rock. Florentina, with trembling hands and a gleam in her eyes, prepares her gear for the adventure. She resolutely fastens her gear and gets ready. It was explained that everyone not from the guild staff must go through a bunch of complicated procedures to enter the dungeon, therefore adventurers must be registered with the dungeon guild. Although adventurers are an unusually free profession and no one punishes them for refusing a request or order, they still have one duty. Then Roman, his voice trembling, explains tensely, a mass invasion of small poisonous bats has been confirmed, an anomaly occurred in the core on the lowest floor, and a panic stampede has been established. The guild warns, as soon as an abnormal accumulation arises in the dungeon, adventurers must immediately respond to the alarm and give everything they have to contain it. Meanwhile, in response, the most diverse adventurers begin to gather. People appear in all imaginable gear and armor. Someone whispers that those who did not come this time should remember it for the next appearance, because C ranks, it turns out, almost never appear in their place. The guild worker says formally this is a duty, but there is no strict rule about 4 hours or anything like that here. The problem is that high-level raiders completely underestimate low-level dungeons. Someone else grimly clarified that reinforcements can urgently be called only up to C rank. But almost everyone is already holding at level 45. The current composition: 2 parties, 1 solo D rank, 3 E rank parties, 12 solos, 1 F rank party, 3 more solos and 4 C ranks, and someone whispers, "Honestly, this is very little." Florentina's eyes blazed with determination, but her thoughts wandered far away. Meanwhile, someone remembered the count's daughter who supported the royal family's banquet. It turned out the guild master was trying to get more reinforcements through his connections. Roman asks Florentina if she really agrees to this. She had said she had plans today, and he feels at least some relief that his sister joined. Tension rises. They discuss how serious everything is. If things go completely wrong, knights or even a hero might intervene, so the worst seems avoidable. But there is a catch: if the hero is forced to act, everyone in their guild will be fired, so now they lay out the plan. 1 solo adventurer of C rank and a party of 4 E rank will stand guard at the entrance to the lowest floor to prevent bats from reaching the upper levels. Roman's side, he will have to somehow manage with what they have now. The diagram shows the plan. The main force will head straight to the very core of the dungeon, exterminating bats along the way, while all other C and D level squads will spread out from the entrance. Instructions continue. Each of the other E ranks will go hunt bats in those areas they will not pass through and will destroy as many as they can. Higher ranks will stubbornly keep fighting around the core until it stabilizes. Suddenly, someone announced that overall they will also join the 2 E rank parties along with instructors, but the problem is that only 5 parties of C and D levels are free, and several adventurers gaped in surprise. F ranks will cover the rear, standing at the entrance and in the safe zone, guarding the peaceful guild members. As soon as everyone confirms their positions, they will rush down to the lowest level. Roman tells Florentina that she will get the most remote and widest sector among the E ranks. She is top both in skill and mobility. Life was bustling near the guild entrance. People were feverishly bustling, preparing to set out. Roman, full of curiosity, asks Florentina if she has ever participated in a mob battle in her hometown. She says that the Tremel dungeon is for high levels, but it is controlled by her great-grandfather, so stampede almost never appeared there. In memory, there is only one childhood adventure when she was only in the rear, and in the memory, Florentina is seen wrapped in heavy winter clothing of those times. Roman clarifies she did it only once. Usually she goes alone and strictly asks, "Put your safety first, and if something happens, immediately retreat to a safe zone." So far, this is just a hobby for her, no need to overexert herself. Florentina thought to herself, in extraordinary situations, such excuses simply won't work. This is the deepest section. If they rush, they will be there in half an hour. With such an onslaught, their ranks must be thinned at any cost. Florentina decisively declares, in her combat scenes, she will pin down anyone who dares to attack her. Show how she fights small poisonous bats in a dynamic battle, instantly draws a pistol and focuses, preparing to meet the swarm advancing on her position. She noticed, although there are many of those small poisonous bats here, they are lower-tier creatures, so as long as no one bites her, there is nothing to worry about. She imagines that the real hustle and bustle is like a dungeon that caught a cold, but if adventurers carefully take care of its health, it almost never gets sick. The panels show adventurers in protective suits barely holding the situation, but as soon as panic grips them, the core malfunctions and starts releasing an avalanche of infected monsters. If these creatures fill the dungeon with infection, they will break out and spread it further. Florentina recalls the words of her great-uncle, "Infected monsters like gunpowder scatter and disappear as soon as you defeat them." The panels show bats falling and disintegrating into fine dust. While Florentina breaks through the swarm, the adventurers urgently need special medicine that destroys the pathogen to prevent infection from the crowd and restore the core to normal. Meanwhile, she rushes insanely fast and impressively accurately, and someone notices that this is what a true adventurer looks like. Now Florentina steps into the zone assigned to her. On the way here, we have already taken down at least 50 bats, and none of them were either real or ordinary. She still has a moment of respite, but the ammo is not infinite. She makes her way through the damp dungeon and decides there is no time to complain. She does not like this method at all. She pulls out several vials. They contain the blood of the clan serpent they defeated earlier. She intends to mix with an extremely volatile chemical substance. Because this tiny poisonous bat is weak, it tries to inject poison into wounds and is extremely sensitive to the smell of blood. Florentina cunningly uses this, breaking through the swarm while another adventurer stands in the dungeon and watches. Suddenly, Florentina opens fire, bright explosions tear through the darkness, and flocks of bats fall under her devastating accuracy. Florentina makes a perfect shot and joyfully jumps with excitement. Her magical flashbang grenades hit the bullseye. She feels that it is just light and noise, no real lethal force. However, if a monster swarm appears before her, she can drive it straight to destruction. She counted 6 grenades remain and, gritting her teeth, reminded herself to use them wisely to immediately reduce the number of enemies. On the 4th shot, she finally hits and the real trouble begins. Florentina decides just in case to throw the empty vials into her magic bag because they say that in an emergency you can leave materials behind. Meanwhile, in the distance, an adventurer man emerges. Florentina freezes for a moment in thought. She is not fighting for meat or materials, she fights only to avoid danger and kill the enemy. She looks at the closed eyes and feels that this is not about her at all. Something seems off, but these thoughts do not let go. Suddenly, a huge swarm approaches, but she tells herself there is no point in thinking about it now. She has only 3 grenades left, and around it seems to have calmed down. She does not feel any bats and again hears surrounding sounds, so maybe it really has quieted down here a bit. Although this is not her zone, she will still have to thin their ranks. Then Florentina looks through the sight and sees something that immediately causes alarm. Bats from all corners of the dungeon are frantically flying straight to the core. Meanwhile, in the distance, another adventurer woman is visible. She wants to launch a signal flare but instantly realizes too far, and in the heat of battle no one will notice her. She has a bad feeling. Suddenly, Roman's words thunder in her head. It's just a hobby. Florentina thinks to herself, will she manage to reach the core before the bats if she rushes at full speed in her magic boots? Florentina rushed forward at full speed. It seemed to her that it was now completely beyond their reach. Seriously, that's not her style at all. Chaos erupted in the center. Someone shouts, "Close the doors." One adventurer loudly orders not to let in the wounded and eranks. Others call for the instructor. The situation rapidly worsens. Then the adventurers froze in shock. A man from the group recognized what stood before them. It was a mutant. In the dungeon stands a gigantic distorted thunder bear. Its presence simply takes one's breath away. And someone quietly explains that these are distorted beasts, high-level monsters who command and control other creatures and whom the dungeon core rarely spawns during an invasion. The man adventurer shouted to everyone not to make any reckless moves, but another adventurer, without blinking, said, "I'll handle this." But everything instantly gets worse. Someone bursts out swearing because a new swarm of bats is approaching, and the adventurers call Roman and the instructor at the most inopportune moment. Suddenly, something exploded in the distance. A huge, blinding flash swept through the entire dungeon. Something hit the swarm, and the adventurers immediately understood. Magic was used here. A loud rumble sounded from afar, echoing for a long time. The man-traveler raises his eyes, trying to comprehend what the hell just happened. Someone shouted loudly for everyone to cover their eyes and ears and lie down on the ground. And here comes Florentina, throwing another flashbang grenade. Explosions destroy everything around, one after another, cutting through the darkness and flooding the entire area with light. The man-adventurer asks what she is doing here and calls her sister. From the explosion, bats scattered in all directions, and several adventurers remained on the ground, slowly coming to their senses after that chaos. Florentina and the adventurer man stood face to face with the mutant storm bear. Someone gave the order, open fire and ignore the threats around. Florentina shoots with a pistol, but even a stunning grenade does not knock this creature down. It is huge. All 6 shots hit, but the bullets ricochet. Her pistol is simply not powerful enough. The adventurers stirred in panic. Even more bats swooped in again. Someone shouted that their number was insane. They called the instructor and warned that the bats were returning. The instructor shouted to everyone, "Quick, back inside for now." Suddenly, a huge swarm of bats filled the sky and darkened everything around. And everyone retreats. The tension in the air becomes unbearable. Someone shouts for everyone to get inside faster. Travelers rush through the doors and head straight to safety. And behind them, in the darkness of the dungeon, reigns a huge, distorted storm bear, and swarms of bats circle around it. The dark presence of the creature covers the entire space, and everyone retreats inside. In the safe zone, the adventurer man, looking at the terrible screech outside, tries to calm everyone. He says that although there are a bunch of bats flying there, they are only small, poisonous bats, too weak to break through walls or doors. But someone notices that the mutant looks different, and the hooded mage calmly assures everyone, "Don't worry, our protective magic is raised." Meanwhile, someone asks, doesn't anyone think maybe they lifted something too heavy or piled too much weight on it? The frame slowly shifts before us as a leg prosthesis, clearly worn from too frequent use. The group is still chattering, and behind on the dartboard calculations are visible. The adventurer thoughtfully considered the situation while someone nearby explained that for an adventurer such wounds and poisonings are quite common, and the protection of low-ranking adventurers is part of the instructor's job. The real trouble is that mana flows in bursts. Its flow is intermittent, so both strength and reaction speed have dropped, probably due to the poison. Tension rises. Everyone is tensely trying to comprehend the situation. Someone asks if that adventurer is really okay. Another mutant has appeared, and everyone is already asking when reinforcements will finally arrive. Then a person with a giraffe-patterned headband admits that they are simply hungry. Someone sharply cut in, "How can you complain about stomach growling at a moment like this?" That person, defending themselves, replied that they came in a hurry and didn't have time to prepare an emergency ration. Suddenly, Florentina pulls something out, and immediately everyone cannot take their eyes off it. Someone can't hold back and asks, "What does the older sister have?" The male adventurer recognizes. Before him is highest-grade thunder grizzly meat. People freeze with admiration, ask if it can really be eaten, and say they would die without regret just to taste it. But someone warns them, "Do not be reckless. Fire in this enclosed space will suffocate everyone." The person complains about their stomach, and then suddenly notices Florentina has a real mountain of sweets instead of a piece of meat. The adventurous boy says to his older sister, "Although you came to the dungeon as if on a tour, this is too much," but he still admits that she saved them and jokes that snacks should cost no more than 100 yen. Florentina happily crunches candies as if this trouble did not touch her, while someone reminds everyone to drink water. Even in such a situation, sweets are still tasty for her, and meanwhile someone asks if anyone needs medicine. The traveler looked at his sister and asked if she really likes this dungeon even at such a time. Honestly, the mood softened a bit. One of the younger adventurers simply dozed off on the spot, and everyone advises to let her sleep, let her rest while there is a chance. Even someone hands Florentina water. Someone tells the rest of the group to rest in turn. There is still a long road ahead. Florentina lies with her eyes closed but says she does not dare to fall asleep in such a situation. The scene shifts to a snowy landscape beyond the royal capital, and in the cold someone calls Tina. A voice commands her even if she descends into the dungeon, only she must enter there. The figure continues. He told her, even if you have to face high-level monsters, you must learn to do everything yourself. Hunting, exploring, and even finding shelter. Deep Florentina, in full winter gear, stands in the snow, a little upset and silently enduring these harsh lessons. Suddenly the window shattered into pieces with a deafening crash. The adventurer's panicked bats flew into the room and someone shouted, "The window is broken, bring boards." Meanwhile, the traveling man casually greeted his sister with a simple, "Good morning." Someone, clearly worried, shouted to Florentina, "Are you okay? You haven't even slept for half an hour." The chaos only grows at the moment when a mutant thunder bear appears near the broken window. Someone shouts, "It's a mutant, step away from the window or they'll pull you out." The huge distorted bear extends its paw and grabs the adventurers. People scream for help as they are dragged toward the opening, and someone shouts, "Abel." Florentina rushed at the creature and struck with all her might right in the mutant bear's face. The safe zone building stands surrounded by mutants. Swarms of bats circle above it, and someone inside loudly shouts, "Hey," trying to attract attention. Florentina stands with her weapon drawn like a living shield, protecting the one who hid behind her back. She loudly calls her older sister, and the other adventurers eagerly ask, "What happened?" Someone with tears in their voice tells her that she saved them and begs to close the hole quickly while there is still a chance. The group rushed to close the broken window, and immediately a quarrel broke out. Someone shouted that the last blow destroyed the protective magic, and someone swears and shouts, promising that they will do something. Meanwhile, one tries to be practical and says that the window needs to be fixed so it doesn't break like last time, and another skeptically exclaims, "Will Florentina really go outside alone to kill that mutant?" The male adventurer turns to his sister and asks how she will handle it. Florentina simply says, easily, and examines the aiming device with a trajectory diagram. She tensely estimates whether she can hit the moving mutant from afar so quietly that the bats won't hear her, and the male adventurer looks anxiously and says that although the pistol seems suitable, there are difficulties. Then the male adventurer asks about the magical communication device and the telescope, and someone is shocked and dismisses, "Isn't that incredibly expensive?" and says that even the guild's budget couldn't afford that. Someone else says that Florentina spent all the savings she had before arriving in the royal capital. The confident adventurer tells the group, "Give me the coordinates Florentina won't miss," but someone notes that the site's field of view is very narrow. A close-up of Florentina's face appears, her eyes burn with determination, and she exclaims, "Next time I will definitely break through." Someone tells them good, they bet on the sister. But the young male adventurer stubbornly says he will go out with her, and the person with the bandage notes, "If they remain, observers' visibility in this lair is too poor, and besides, they add, they have already been poisoned." Someone protests indignantly, saying that the insurance holder's prosthetic leg won't move him from his place. The adventurer considers this reckless and calls the instructor Roman. Then a dark-haired adventuress with hope in her voice asks to be allowed to help them too. When the group gathers, someone suddenly throws a sharp remark about the plan. Someone loudly asks, "Is everyone ready?" Another person announces that they are opening the door, and the adventurers rush into the dungeon. The group bursts through the door, someone shouts, "Scatter," and another adventurer yells, trying to drive bats away from the mutant. The adventuress with glasses throws her last flashbang grenade. The explosion bursts out in a huge wave of light and rumble, driving away the bats and clearing the passage. Suddenly, Florentina sharply shoots upward at full power, jumping thanks to her magical boots. She cuts through the dungeon space, rifle at the ready. The observer in the hood below confirms that they are ready and gives the signal forward. Florentina takes position and aims. The observer shouts coordinates. Mutants under the dungeon core slowly crawl up left at an angle of about 20 degrees. Florentina tracks the target with her sight. A huge mutant bear breaks through a swarm of bats in the field of view. A sudden shot breaks the silence. The bullet hits the mutant. Florentina hoarsely says she hit the body and wings, but it is not a fatal wound. The assistant replies that it is unclear and asks to aim for the head, but other bats circle around its head and block the shot. Suddenly, poisonous bats swoop down on Florentina, and she desperately fights to thin them out. Her brother calls her anxiously, and another swarm flies straight at her. She says everything is fine. She, as if to calm, explained, "The poisoned little bats are too weak. Their poison is not strong. They won't immobilize her immediately." Meanwhile, below, other adventurers are still fighting the swarms of bats with all their might, and a male adventurer tells her that if she is an adventurer, she is used to this, to which Florentina only agrees, saying it's a trifle. Then she suddenly shouts for everyone to move away from her and keep far away. Other adventurers step aside. She still breaks through the swarm of bats without losing her sniper position. But suddenly, Florentina's brother lunges forward and with one powerful strike breaks through the swarm. Someone shouts to him, "Go to them," while he fights off those damn bats. Another adventurer shouted, "What are you doing? With so much blood the bats will immediately swarm." And indeed, the blood splatters attracted them and they flew straight at the instructor. Below, the travelers are overwhelmed by the swarm's pressure and desperately fight it. The observer through the scope sees the bats descending lower and lower in the sky and reports that they are coming down. Someone shouts coordinates and yells towards Florentina, "Aim at the dungeon core in the upper right corner." Florentina aims through her scope at the mutant bear and fires. And the shot hits like a devastating blow. The mutant bear fell backward and began to crumble right before everyone's eyes. One of the adventurers asks if they really defeated it, and indeed, the giant creature crumbles to dust and disappears into nowhere. Then the color of the dungeon core began to change. Several bats disappeared on their own. The adventurers felt that the worst was behind and they needed to continue thinning out the rest, and someone shouted, "First of all, Instructor Roman, stop his bleeding immediately." Suddenly someone noticed something and shouted at the top of their lungs, "Look there. His brother Florentini." Florentina lies completely exhausted. Poisonous bats still cling to her face and body, but she is smiling. Suddenly, an old piece of advice comes to mind: never enter the IVA dungeon alone. A voice told her that she must learn to do everything on her own, but she can have friends and allies even if they are not on her team. The memory continued. Someone asked if it was really worth acting that way. The advice echoes and does not cease, saying that even if she encounters a problem she cannot handle alone. When friends are nearby, she feels she can overcome anything. A flashback emerges, Florentina and Roman in his winter gear during their previous training. Returning to the present, someone lingers on Florentina's scars and suddenly recognizes them. The voice quietly fades. Meanwhile, Florentina's brother notices she opened her eyes. Other adventurers sighed with relief and, as one exclaimed, "Thank God our elder sister has woken up." Florentina asks if it is safe here, and her brother nods to confirm that the panic has been calmed. At that moment, the guild master appeared with an A-rank team, and they instantly scattered the last bats, and the dungeon core completely returned to its original color. Wonderful, I'm going to. Suddenly her nose caught an incredibly delicious smell from somewhere. The travelers explained that they were preparing for a party celebrating because they stopped the panic crowd. Florentina calls out with all her might, "Wait until we get out of the dungeon, there are wounded here." But it turned out that the guild master pulled out his secret stash of venison from the hideout right during the fight. In the middle of the crowd, everyone chanted in unison that they wanted meat, and someone now wonders if it is their fault. Any moment now, the meat will be grilled, and everyone will be eagerly waiting for it. Someone explained nothing should be given to the two wounded. It is hard for them to digest, so maybe next time. Another said to Florentina, "Don't be so picky." Traveler insists that one skewer won't hurt, and Florentina stubbornly tries to object. But someone is already handing her the meat kebabs from aged forest deer. Meat have already browned and are ready. The adventurers say that this is rare venison from a noble forest deer, aged 2 years. The meat looks thick, juicy, and extremely filling, and also grilled over coals. Suddenly, Florentina's brother loudly called his older sister. One of the rescued adventurers, whose voice trembled with gratitude, sincerely thanks Florentina for saving them. The whole group, even the woman with glasses and the elderly man, tightly gathered around Florentina and her brother. A slight sparkle plays in Florentina's eyes as she thinks that her hobby is solitary dungeon crawling. Climbing into reckless adventures, getting stuck in crises, and overcoming difficulties shoulder to shoulder with comrades, she does not do that. Is completely unlike her. She holds a skewer with meat and looks confused. The venison from the Sagu dungeon, which she tasted for the first time, was thick and tasty but left a slightly prickly aftertaste. And then, a little later, summer holidays began at school. Every time Florentina argues with her annoying parents, she breaks out of the house and ends up in the Sagu dungeon, while her father shouts after her from the manor window as she rushes away. She was called the heroine of that panic, and the guild promised, just apply and without an exam they will raise you to rank D. She categorically refused. That's it. Her rank remains E, practically nothing has changed. Thing is, she started approaching familiar faces herself. She herself steps into the dungeon. Florentina sets out again on solitary dungeon expeditions, fighting monsters alone, for example, a huge wolf-like beast, while other adventurers only watch from afar. She sets up camp in a safe zone, unfolds her tent. Later, she fries meat from her hunts in a pan and is truly happy while preparing her meal. The scene shifts to the present. Late at night, a young student sits at a desk completely exhausted and stressed, studying intensely, while somewhere else someone calmly rests in a tent. Thoughtful expression appears on Florentina's face, and the starry night sky spreads over the dark dungeon landscape. She lies there peacefully sleeping with that satisfied expression on her face. Her thoughts drift, and she reflects thus, the dungeon, that is what matters, so it's better to enter it as a hobby. Then the plot shifts to modern Tokyo. On one side, a tutor at a preparatory school named Aikido, on the other JK Florentina, who also lives here. Florentina says she bought it as soon as it was released for sale and wants to. She really wants to try wild game too, but it's hard to do that in a big city. Teacher notes, I can just buy this online. He actually wanted to cook curry, so he bought venison and smiling said to her, "All right, you can have some." Teacher smiles and recalls, his was bought at a roadside station, and depending on where you live, such things can really be found at similar stops. He has a portable stove, but he is sure that a slow cooker is better suited for stew. All the ingredients and the rice cooker are neatly arranged on the countertop, as if ready for action. Florentina raised an eyebrow and asked if he wasn't going to do any preparation at all, like in that manga about solo dungeons. The teacher calmly explained that the meat at the market was already processed by professionals. At least the meat he bought was tasty even without additional preparation. There is even a note: the author tried quickly thawing without seasoning, and surprisingly, it turned out quite well. When the meat finally thawed and became bite-sized pieces, he blotted them with a paper towel and started cutting. Then he leisurely puts the fried meat into the slow cooker along with the chopped vegetables and water and presses the button. Fire doesn't require supervision, so the teacher relaxedly takes out the newly bought manga and begins reading. Here it is, the finished dish, modern tomato curry with venison from Jabir. Finally, I add curry roux to the slow cooker. Florentina tasted the curry and felt, the meat, though rich in flavor, was completely free of gamey taste and so tender. Finally, summer came and Florentina imagined, as soon as she finished her homework every day, she would devote to her favorite activities. But everything went completely differently. At the last minute, she was unexpectedly invited to join His Highness the Crown Prince on his summer courtship vacation, and she was dragged into it. Finally, the long summer school holidays began. Florentina was completely irritated by this situation, and in the middle of a field of flowers stood His Highness Wilfried R. Abel Dyer Hadriacanron, the heir to the throne. A few years ago, under the burden of his official duties, he worked tirelessly, knowing no rest. He declared he himself would become the king of this country. In the end, he would put all his money and all the power he had into action. They say the crown prince passionately declared that he would definitely marry the woman of his destiny. He could at least be a little selfish in choosing his future wife, and the nobles with the courtiers were shocked by this passionate statement. As if among all the royal duties, the heir to the throne was not idle at all, tirelessly courting, searching for his destiny regardless of country, title, or status. From time to time, large-scale events are held, a real festival of introductions, where new faces appear at almost every step. And the lady personally nominated cannot refuse unless something truly extraordinary happens. But still, he grabbed the nomination at the last minute and didn't even ask her, so Florentina considers her father that damned old man, and no matter how you look at it, she is just a temporary replacement for the lady who cancelled. Suddenly, the maid ran into the room and, out of breath, shouted to Florentina, "The summer vacation schedule has arrived from the subordinate crown prince. The acquaintance party is today at 6 in the evening, so she is free until that hour." Florentina, shining with joy, tells the maid that she has been allowed to go out and see the sights. Although most of the young ladies are settled in their rooms and bustling, preparing for the party. Instead, Florentina, without hesitation, decisively steps out the door. She is a traveler to the bone, a hairpin rifle holding her casual hairstyle, a charming bag on her shoulder, no makeup, favorite coat, pants, and charming boots. All items marked M have magical properties. At the window, Florentina shouted that she would return by 6, but the maid called back that she would not make it by 6, so she begs return by 5. She madly loves to venture into dungeons alone. She loves to descend into dungeons all over the world completely by herself, to explore them, hunt, and set up camp there. The thing is, those dungeons she dives into are not some mysterious high-level labyrinths, but fully explored initial dungeons of an extremely low rank. As soon as she learned that the summer camp would take place in the city, she froze and did not take her eyes off that place. Now she stands right before the entrance to the dungeon, carved directly into the rocky terrain. Here, in the mountain slope, the NO beginner dungeon is cut in. Nearby, like a silent giant, stands the building of the dungeon guild. Inside, a guild worker asks Florentina if it is her first time at E rank and simply says, "Write your name and rank on that board. After that, you are free to come and go as you please." Meanwhile, Florentina does not take her eyes off her equipment hanging there. Someone confidently explains that this is usually how one enters the dungeon, and another voice indignantly throws, "Shoddy work." Florentina signs the registration board, and next to her stands a male adventurer who says that as soon as someone registers, even in his gray tunkles, everyone is simply left alone. Then everything was explained in more detail. It turned out that the guild was rather a means to combat poachers. Illegal entry is one thing, but it seems the guild masters were going to give a good scolding, and those guys who were completely wrecked there turned out to be D ranks. At least people were registered at the entrance and exit, and near the entrance someone threw. There is no one there either, and the male adventurer begins to worry what will happen if he can no longer manage expeditions to other dungeons. But the cheerful guild worker smiles and asks him not to hesitate to ask, even offers some bread and kindly asks to fill out an application for joining Sagu. The male adventurer says he is already too used to Sagu's caring hospitality, and someone reminds him that at first an instructor will guide him. Although the Audit engine has only 2 floors, and yet first floor is just a huge empty space. Florentina stands in a huge cave, looking around at scattered debris and signs below. People are packing their belongings, and it seems to her that no one has truly settled in this dungeon. Sound of waves reached her, and if someone continues descending that long spiral staircase, it leads somewhere even deeper. Suddenly, a lonely island appears. Around it, in all 360 degrees, only ocean and clouds. The view is stunning. A mountain island rises from the water, and although they are underground in a labyrinth, Florentina seems to see before her an endless ocean with waves crashing on the shore. Various sea creatures were happily swimming around the island in the water. The ocean spread out before the island, and powerful monsters lurk in the open sea, so adventurers will probably be able to earn more by sailing a boat to the cliffs. About 10 kilometers from the shore rise cliffs and walls that seem to stretch into infinity. Even with magical boots, flying 10 kilometers over the ocean is too much for Florentina. The island has bays and docks, so she decides to stay. The walls are so blue that they seem like the real sky. Waves flow over them, and Florentina even smells the tide, but the monsters are somewhere out there, outside. For now, all she can do is walk along the shore and look around. She decided that today she can forget about hunting and camping in a tent, but there is still something about this place. Flying creatures attack her as she makes her way through the rocky terrain. She moves among the coastal stones and simply walks along the shore, but suddenly Florentina feels a strange sensation. Although she wanders aimlessly, something seems different. Suddenly it dawns on her, actually it's fun. Sometimes the howling of monsters adds a pleasant atmosphere and somehow heals, maybe because the dungeon is new or maybe just the sound of the waves. Suddenly she is struck by an epiphany. These feelings had just been hidden for some time, probably since she received worn clothes from her great-grandfather's uncle. Now she remembers. Meanwhile, Florentina sets up a fabric folding chair right on the beach shore and settles into it. And the sound of waves echoes in the air. I am enveloped by a quiet, warm calm. She turns the situation over in her mind. There are almost no monsters on land. Making a fire is a real torment, and she really wants tea. She worries whether she is lowering her guard. This is not a safe zone at all, yet she still leans back and allows herself to relax because this moment somehow seems right to her. Suddenly, a thin voice calls Florentina. She looks up and sees a mysterious girl with big eyes and light braids in a fur hood approaching her, who asks if Florentina wants coffee. Florentina froze. She had no idea someone had come so close. The merchant hurriedly waves her hands, trying to ease the tension, and insists that she does not arouse suspicion. While holding an Adventurer's Guild card as proof, she explained with a smile that she trades in the dungeon potions and various trinkets. Suddenly, Florentina understood what was happening. She had heard rumors that underground merchants really exist, but this was the first time she saw one in person. The merchant pulls out a menu and Florentina looks through it. There is a bunch of coffee to choose from, as well as potions and lemon water. The merchant points to one of today's recommended blends, and Florentina, interested, chooses something from the menu. The saleswoman got so excited and exclaimed that she would bring it any moment, adding that Florentina was the first to ever order coffee from her, as usually everyone only asks for medicine or water. She promises to brew a tasty cup. The saleswoman happily says that she gives free snacks to everyone who brings their own mug, and Florentina sincerely confirms she won. The merchant begins preparing the coffee, and Florentina waits patiently. The merchant, attentive to details, carefully prepares everything, slowly brewing the coffee and putting everything in order. She brings a tray. On it steams a freshly prepared cup, next to it a few kavara cookies as a bonus, and she sincerely apologizes for the delay. Florentina raises the cup and takes a deep breath. The aroma of coffee drowns out even the smell of the surf around, and suddenly she is overwhelmed by the realization she hasn't had coffee for so long. Honestly, just the aroma is already worth it. Then the saleswoman steps away, says it's her time to go, and asks Florentina, if you meet again, please order another coffee. Florentina watches her leave and still thinks about how mysterious this girl is. She takes a sip of coffee. The sourness was muted to make the drink softer, but it is bitter with real depth. The taste impressed her. She could not help but admit how delicious it was. The coffee perfectly highlights the sweetness of the cookies, and Florentina feels like she has entered an endless circle. Sip, peace, and she cannot stop. Later, Florentina walks, replaying in her mind her first dungeon expedition. She pulls out a chair, rests a bit, takes a sip of coffee, and simply wanders, absorbing everything that happened. Finally, she found herself again in a beach chair under the shade of trees. The sword leaned against the chair, a cup of coffee in her hand, and before her stretched a peaceful landscape. She was satisfied. Florentina relaxed in the beach lounge chair and with a slight smile thinks, she always knew dungeons are best when you do it just for fun, and she decides to go home as soon as she finishes her drink. Later, in a magnificent ballroom, full of nobles and brightly shining crystal chandeliers, Roman approaches and quite casually greets Florentina. Roman says that the hero came to him in tears, and as soon as he said he was going to check the Eno dungeon, everything instantly went awry. Florentina immediately interrupts him, "Don't say that out loud," and asks why he is here, but Roman does not give up. He continues and calls himself an instructor of dungeon seeker Sagu. He says that the hero practically begged him to go on the crown princess's trip instead of him. No one else could, and Roman could easily handle the inspection. But Florentina counters that this is not something you can do on the side, and Roman insists that their schedules already coincided, so everything will work out. Roman promised to ensure that Florentina received fair compensation. When everything became clear, the hero set off on a family vacation. And then Roman suddenly remembers Florentina was going to dive into the Eno dungeon in her free time anyway, right? He asks her to help with the inspection, but Florentina calmly says that she will go there a little later herself. Roman can't hold back and asks, "Has it already started?" Roman calls her his regular client and says he does it just as a hobby, perfectly normal. He counts on her, explains that it helps him too because right now he barely keeps up. Asks that if she notices any differences from Sagu or anything else she should say so immediately. Meanwhile, Florentina recalls how she was told something similar during that scuffle. Roman says that there might still be people hanging around the guild or near the entrance, so he will ask her another time. Meanwhile, with a burden in her heart, Florentina remembers how quite depressed she was because right at the start of summer vacation she got stuck with the duties of a noble lady. Roman says all right to her and tells all the details. Reaching the lower floor of Eno is much easier than to Sagu, so she will be able to enjoy it fully even in a short time. Although they won't be able to spend 2 full days like in Sagu, the main goal of this trip is still the introduction, so they will actually have plenty of free time. Florentina's determination grows this time. She will devote all her free time to fully enjoy her hobby. The scene shifts to a charming seaside town where a summer matchmaking camp for the heir to the throne is underway. Florentina is still there for His Highness. She has already greeted the Lord and his wife on the eve of the last day of her own matchmaking. She says, free from this afternoon until tomorrow night. It is precisely thanks to one more person who connected their stories that she finally got that long-awaited overnight stay. Now only one thing remains to act. New dungeon time to set off. Florentina stands on the pier, fishing rod ready. The time for hunting has come. She is most fascinated by solitary raids into dungeons. She loves hunting and camping in beginner dungeons, but in any new dungeon she always tries to hunt first. The Eno dungeon turns out to be a real ocean, and among the waves dungeon Florentina sits in a tiny boat with a fishing rod, suddenly realizing that this is real fishing, not hunting. She uses a cheap fishing rod bought for fishing at the sources of Sagu, and looks into the water with doubt. Will she catch anything at all? She has long been used to waiting and always returning empty-handed after usual hunts, so this time she decides not to rush. Yesterday even just sitting was fun, and now she lowers bait into the water meat of a clan serpent. Florentina settles in, thinking that while waiting she will drink tea and have a snack, but she barely managed to relax. Something bites. The rod suddenly bends and she feels incredible strength. The rod almost breaks from the jerk. Suddenly a lower-level monster appears, a walking shark. The monster bursts out of the water near Florentina's boat, its giant jaws snapping loudly very close. Florentina, sword in hand, fights the shark in an explosive clash. She did defeat it, but suddenly realized she had involuntarily grabbed a pistol and fired from too close a distance. The meat was soft, but from the impact it just flew off, and she wonders if really even in a beginner dungeon there are such hordes of fierce creatures, so for now she decided just to wash the shark and shove it straight into a magic bag. Florentina knew that monitoring freshness and finishing off sea monsters was extremely important, so she tried to be careful, but she did not have that luxury. She decides to stay for now and fish until evening. Now, although at first she thought she would stop as soon as the fishing rod broke. Half an hour has already passed. We caught 12 fish and the fishing rod held much better than we had guessed. It's still too early to head to the safe zone, so she, confused, looks for what to do and tries the option of going all the way to the very end of the pier. Suddenly near the pier where people were standing, a shark rushed at them. Florentina finally decides she will go to the safe zone. In the dungeon of Eno, there are only 2 zones left where one can feel safe. One is in the tower that rises in the middle of the Western Sea, and the other is right here, halfway up the stairs. The safe zone on the island is a space like a donut, with several large windows from which a vast panorama of the island and the sea unfolds before the eyes. Florentina thinks if they had a boat, she would definitely try to set up camp right in the middle of the sea. She sets up a tent. The shape is a bit different than usual, but it will do. Time to get to dinner. First, she walks to the water station where the island's spring water flows. She smiled. She thought that underground fish are safe raw, so she decided to try to prepare that carpaccio that was served at yesterday's party. She proudly lifted the first shark she caught. It couldn't be sold anyway, so she would use it for dinner. Florentina takes the shark, deciding to first cut open its belly, and before her appears a huge liver. She does not stop peeling the skin and separating the meat from the bone, and suddenly freezes for a moment. Movement, we move on. Everything was unpacked, but it was so sloppy and ugly that she simply remains silent about the details. Florentina is now considering in her mind the options for what to cook for dinner. But in the end, she just heaps together everything that is still lying around. Her meal turned out like this: a bombastic cake that she saved for a snack, a few emergency rations, dried beef and raisins, and black tea that the maid brewed before leaving. She eats and everything seems sweet and incredibly tasty. Honestly, sometimes days are just like that. The tea is tasty, but it doesn't really go well with dried meat. Florentina thinks that instead of it, soup or something similar would have been better. Meanwhile, the traitor in the dungeon was somewhere else inside, thinking that today that girl did not come to her. She could have bought more coffee if they were nearby, but now she really needed water. Someone notices that it really does go well with wild grapes. There are just days like that. Later that night, the ocean gently dozes under the stars while Florentina sweetly sleeps in her tent. Suddenly someone shouted, "Faster," because the food frenzy is about to begin. The boat drifted on the dark ocean waters until suddenly a shark was attacked and brutally killed. The noise tore through the night and woke Florentina. She looked outside and saw that the adventurers were already bustling, although it was still completely dark outside. Meanwhile at the pier, complete chaos. Several adventurers got into a fight over territory. Some shouted to stop pushing, others stubbornly declared that today they would take this spot because the end of the pier was theirs, and the most aggressive warned those without equipment to retreat. Glancing around the place, he finally realized hunting from midnight to dawn is much better than during the day. Various adventurers are dividing the loot, and someone throws into the conversation, "Sogo essentially the same, but in the initial dungeons the risk is much lower, so you won't make real money unless you catch them by the ton." Nearby there is an illustration that clearly shows the entire beach operation. Another adventurer suddenly took command and roared, "Take those who have already been strangled, throw them into baskets and take them back to the beach." The baskets were medium-sized, but they seemed to have a passage of time, and inside lived ice magic. Meanwhile, someone warned that maybe it's time to be more careful. Another traveler confirms this, but suddenly someone shouts loudly and urgently, "Everyone run out and head to the beach. The light must be turned off right now." A huge creature emerges from the water. Someone shouts fearfully, "It's a dwarf hammerhead shark." The shark rushes closer and closer. Someone curses that it is too close. Meanwhile, an adventurer shouts to the leader, and the panicking group realizes there is no time for spells. Florentina stabs a knife into the head of a dwarf hammerhead shark, but the skull is like stone, and she curses because the knife doesn't even indicate whether it reached vital organs, and she regrets not taking a pistol. Suddenly, one of the adventurer guys shouted, "Can you lift the shark's head?" Florentina activates her magical boots and rushes along the beach, sliding over the sand at incredible speed. Men adventurers raised enhancement spells and wind magic. Their attacks became even more powerful. And the combined magical strike suddenly throws the dwarf hammerhead shark with insane force, scattering the adventurers across the water and beach. Florentina and others escaped alive and landed on the shore. On the beach, over the fallen shark, one of the adventurers explains tensely that recently the dwarf hammerhead has been appearing near the pier and attacking both monsters and other adventurers, and someone notes with surprise that usually such sharks stay in deep water. The bald adventurer slyly stated that the head can be sold for a high price and suggested dividing it. Florentina takes the head and skin, and his group takes the carcass. Florentina's comrades enthusiastically praise her strength and sincerely thank her for saving them. The group was still arguing about dividing the loot when suddenly one adventurer loses self-control and shouts that if they process the carcass themselves, the guild will only buy it as weapon material. Another tries to calm him down, saying it's okay, they owe their rescue to Florentina, but the first insists that if they eat the meat themselves and only give a certain part to the guild, they won't be at a loss. The bald adventurer suspiciously asks if Florentina is really giving such a valuable head for such a trifle, and Florentina just smiles and offers to show them how to properly dissect a shark. She sincerely admits that she would rather take the meat than the head anyway, and the bald adventurer admits, in any case, he wasn't the one who finished it off. The group tensely dissects the giant shark carcass. Florentina strictly asks, "Be careful, do not damage some parts, they will still be needed," and then adds, "Work along the spine." The bald adventurer shook his head and mockingly asked if she was really sure she only wanted half the skin and some meat because they would pay almost nothing for that. The disassembly was finished, and someone said that Florentina had previously messed up and ruined one of the walk sharks, and another partner added that she caught 12 walk sharks in broad daylight and learned well how to disassemble them. The bald adventurer looks closely at the containers prepared by Florentina and notices she just turned spoiled shark meat into mince. He notices it is not bloody, not mixed with guts, the skin was removed so it is clean. Florentina, with a trembling voice, asks if they still have that walk shark that she previously ruined. She suggests if so you can add some spices and aromatic herbs to the mince, and then chop it even finer with a knife. Here it is, the ready dish walk shark namru, a traditional delicacy made from finely chopped fish. The bald traveler tries the namru and smiles. He says it was originally invented as a snack for drinking, but it also tastes great on bread. Florentina tries the dish, holding her breath. As soon as the dense texture touched her tongue, a bright taste of fish and spices exploded in her mouth, and she mentally decided, this will definitely go well with bread. Then the group gathers together and pours out culinary ideas. The bald traveler says that if chopped it can be thrown into a hot pot or grilled. Another suggests adding finely chopped mushrooms and root vegetables and wrapping in shiso leaves. Suddenly one shouted, "What is our leader doing?" And another barked for everyone to forget about gourmet cuisine and first try the raw fish. From their shark catch, the group prepares 2 dishes serving sashimi from a dwarf hammerhead shark, generously drizzled with soy sauce, alongside another dish. A dispute erupted among the travelers. Someone shouted that the sashimi from that other monster should come first, starting with the dried one, and the young traveler thundered in response that he would prepare it right away, whether in a pan or deep fried, because it would be delicious in any form. Florentina tries the sashimi. The meat seems to melt in her mouth. The whole group gathered at the table to eat, and between bites of bread, they actively discussed how their first run into this new dungeon was full of the unknown and mistakes. Meanwhile, Florentina gazed enchantedly at the prepared shark meat and the various dishes they had made, and honestly, as long as she could eat something tasty and was able to learn something new, that was enough for her. Soon the group approaches the entrance to the Eno dungeon. Lively adventurers rejoice finally arrived, but someone notes that they are too slow. It turns out the exam overseer is already waiting and insists they set off, and the group grumbles that it's not their fault a cheap passing wagon delayed them too much. But the overseer sternly reminds them that they were supposed to arrive last night, and then the young adventurer protests indignantly, explaining that they organized everything elsewhere and came here because they were told they couldn't take the exam in Sogo, so they decided to take it here. The guild employee with curly dark hair nodded and confirmed, this is the exam for promotion to D rank. She asks each to draw 1 paper from the box, explains the rules, and says, if they complete the task on the paper within a week they pass, redrawing is forbidden. Unlike the Dungeon of Sogo, which takes 1 person 2 whole weeks to pass, this exam requires only 1 quest, but time is scarce, the tasks are ruthless, and most importantly, there will be no mentor, so they will have to work as a trio. One of the adventurers pulls out his task and reads it aloud. The task is to tear out both eyes of the Leviathan. The group sparkled with excitement and was ready to set off, but then someone looked with distrust. They say that the Leviathan is a highest rank monster in the Eno dungeon, and such creatures adventurers are lucky to see maybe once every few years. One of the male adventurers admits that he has been in this business for a long time, but never imagined that such quests could appear in the lottery. He says that the creature can only be defeated by hitting it in the eyes, that is its weak spot, but reaching both eyes will be extremely difficult. The bald traveler immediately gives up and, feeling defeated, says that he might only gather enough for a carriage home, while the others offer at least to help him gather information if he wants. The conversation turned to whether they would meet that adventurer's sister in the dungeon. He says he asked her himself, but she seems too busy. Someone extends money and says, I will pay daily if she agrees to help with the work. Meanwhile, the scene quietly shifts to the private salon of the Lord's wife. Their guild has just received a new cosmetic oil made from materials directly from the dungeons and with a strange, almost magical effect. The skin seems to renew after each application, and noble ladies are already flocking to see it. One of them immediately recognized it, the very product everyone is already talking about. The ladies instantly lowered their voices to whispers, discussing the cosmetics. One whispered that it might be better not to mention it to the young ladies of the upper world. Another asked in surprise who even knows about it. You wonder what it actually is. One marvels at what flowers are used. A third lady notes that the ingredients seem like they are from the dungeon. and asks what herbs they really are. Someone admits that she tried it yesterday, and the makeup applied completely differently like day and night. Another adds that even the crown prince will notice the difference, and the noble ladies continue to whisper excitedly about the new cosmetics. And one of them reveals the truth: the ingredients are monster livers. These are exactly the parts that are usually discarded for the guild. They have no value at all. The blonde noblewoman suddenly put the puzzle together. The merchant guild increases its profits by supplying what is usually thrown away directly to the guild that needs it. And the words quiet down to a whisper. Rumors about the city's dungeons begin to spread. One of the ladies with a sparkle in her eyes quietly whispered what she heard: they have items that embody love, and another immediately picked up: she heard rumors about the dungeons. The conversation shifted to cherry shells from the Eno dungeon, and one noble lady sighed. They are so fragile that finding an intact one is a true rarity. They say one traveler found 2 of them and made earrings from them. A prince from another country noticed her because of them, and they got married. The fair-haired nobleman pondered. Since then, these shells have become a love talisman for young ladies. She considers options, imagines treasure hunting, and estimates how such an item could help the heir to the throne. She suddenly decided to change her plans a bit. Today, instead of honing her shark-gutting skill in a safe zone, she will do something else. Meanwhile, Florentina walks along the beach, holding a fork high, and decisively announces that she is changing plans, setting out to search for treasures. When people think about dungeon exploration, they vividly imagine setting up camp, hunting monsters, and gathering plants, all for the sake of treasures that are so often hidden in dungeons. And Florentina, smiling with that signature sly smile, says that her hobby is to go into dungeons alone. It's a bit sad to imagine that people once risked descending into dungeons just for this. The adventurer man notices that in high-level dungeons, treasure hunters still swarm, and honestly, reports of found treasures pour in by the ton. But in the initial dungeons like Sagu, in the last 10 years he has neither seen nor even heard of such things. That place has been picked clean, and nothing new visits there anymore. Florentina admits even if they can't get real treasures, there is always a chance to come across at least a few shells. He digs in the sand as if searching for a forgotten treasure. He grabs a low-level mollusk monster that bites. I already imagine how I will savor it when I eat it later. Suddenly, out of nowhere, a walk shark appears and attacks. Florentina defends herself with a fork and quite easily defeats it. The adventurer man says, "We are literally doing the same thing as always." Florentina sincerely admits she had imagined this day more as a real treasure hunt, and although it's cool that they collected so much, this is not at all what she had imagined, and her brother, worried, asks if she is all right. Suddenly, a girl merchant from the dungeon appears, cheerful and smiling. She greets them and asks with a smile if they want some coffee. Florentina notices her, and the merchant says that today she is rummaging along the beach in search of finds. Florentina asks what this combing actually is, and the merchant enthusiastically praises today's recommended coffee and lard cookies, explaining that beachcombing is essentially collecting everything the sea throws onto the shore. Dungeon merchant says that in the Eno dungeon, sometimes scales and bones of high-level monsters are washed ashore. Such materials are usually quickly grabbed by specialists. She pulls out a beautiful shell, smiles, and says that from time to time she rummages along the beach. The guild really buys such finds for magical tools. Florentina examines one shell and, smiling, thinks how beautiful and cute it is. The merchant shakes her head. Good ones are hard to find, and adds that she herself is looking for those cherry shells her sister mentioned. She says that craftsmen who make tools or furniture will buy even shells and driftwood that the guild does not take, turning them into jewelry and stylish furniture, so adventurers can earn some pocket money. The seller, with a dreamy smile on her lips, says she would very much like to someday see a beautiful, whole cherry bone. The merchant smiled and said she was already leaving. Florentina sincerely thanked her for the purchased coffee. The girl walks, and Florentina, having finished her coffee, decides to stay a little longer and look around. She savors every sip, dreams of treasures among the roots, and carefully combs the beach. Suddenly she stumbles upon a large shell. Meanwhile, Florentina's brother lifts a heavy log nearby and hesitates whether he really needs it. Other adventurers shouted, asking, "You don't want this, give it to us." Florentina noticed there are 3 of them. She just wanted to take a walk but got so caught up in searching on the beach that she collected quite a few nice little things. Her basket is now full of shells and trinkets, and she wants to add them to her grandmother's birthday gift. Such cute things will definitely please her grandmother. Florentina wonders if this is the same court lady she is thinking of. Then she plans to wash them nicely, or maybe give them to the servant as souvenirs. Florentina remembers that she also needs to find a few mollusks soon, but suddenly catches a delicious smell and wonders, Is someone cooking something tasty in the safe zone? Florentina's brother notices her and loudly calls out that it's his sister. Someone asks if she is here, and her brother asks if she didn't have. He says he has business today, then tells her to listen to him. His voice sounds quite irritated. A group of adventurers gathered in the safe zone, including a merchant from the dungeon, and Florentina beamed with joy seeing them all. And the shot abruptly zooms in a close-up of 3 mollusks. Brother complains as if God himself tells them, do not become deeranks. And another adventurer groaned, went through the whole path in vain, thought to pull out the one top mission from hundreds of cards. Meanwhile, someone serves crackling grilled clams. Other adventurers with trembling voices ask if they are really sure. The group reassures them, don't worry, thank you for the food, and everyone starts eating. The merchant woman, all delighted, says that these clams are so big and filling, they are so pleasant to eat, and the sauce and broth perfectly combine. Someone is already recalling even more. In a large pot, the clams glisten, gently steamed with wine. Brother Florentina smiles and says, of course, you can eat a little too. In close-up, someone's hands carefully lift a shell. Florentina imagines that small but plump meat and rich broth, tries one as soon as she bites. The taste spreads along with the aroma of wine, big and small, all so wonderful that she only says, exquisite. Suddenly, the instructor recognizes Florentina and warmly greets her. Someone extends 2 beautiful sakura shells payment for the food they received, and Florentina's brother looks closely and says that they got a really good cherry shell. Florentina is surprisingly confused, examining such incredible quality shells. The group started talking about whether cherry shells are really so popular for resale, but someone noted that there is no special demand. Then another person said that they could be loved as talismans, and Florentina remained completely puzzled. Someone says that once they brought cherry pits to the guild along with other materials, but the guild just cut them off, saying that ordinary pits without magic are not bought. Florentina agrees and, smiling, says that for someone who does not believe in love charms, these shells are almost worthless. The conversation turned again to trading tricks. Someone said that if Sagu were nearby, he would make even those who did not want the items buy them. Another reminded that Sagu did not even take chopped meat from them. Meanwhile, one, shining with excitement, asked to buy thunder bear meat, and a third adventurer grimly declared that he would eat all his meat himself and sell nothing. Florentina's brother calmly says that he will handle this matter and asks to be told all the details later. The girl merchant from the dungeon cannot believe her eyes. How can the guild refuse to buy such materials as livers, wood thrown up by the sea, and those same popular shells that people actually want? The brother sincerely believes that cherry pits are a love talisman and says that if they really can make love happen, he wants to give them to an acquaintance who is having a hard time now. Someone suggests exchanging what they have on hand for this. The brother anxiously asks if they are sure about the deal, and another person calmly says, just repay for the food with physical labor. Florentina also offers an exchange, but another adventurer refuses. It turns out she already gave him a bunch of things earlier. He adds that she helped them during the panic and they have already gathered plenty of mollusks, so he is fine with it, while the dungeon seller thoughtfully twists her shell in her hands, not knowing what to do with it. She feels it is wrong to sell it, and she even thinks about giving it to someone. Her cousin is just the right age when a love talisman could come in handy, but she honestly admits to herself she has no buyer for it, and she is not very inclined to romance. Then in a frame it is explained. The value of an item changes with time and place, and in the illustration a beautiful shell with a pearl shines. Someone suggests maybe give the girl merchant in the dungeon a cherry pit as a token of thanks for the coffee. Florentina lifted the shell and thoughtfully asked herself whether it was selfish to want this treasure to fall into the hands of someone who truly understands its value, and felt that even simple coffee drunk in a dungeon has the same worth for her. And the value of objects can increase all thanks to people's feelings, or simply surrender to luck. The brother says, let it be for their good. The merchant lit up with joy at receiving another item, and Florentina firmly declares that at least delicious food should go to someone who truly knows how to enjoy it. At the tea party of the Throne Heir, when the matchmaking was in full swing, Florentina suddenly exclaimed that she had acquired an extraordinarily rare item and wanted to share it with everyone. In the elegant reception hall, various noble persons gathered, and someone enthusiastically noted the prince is in an incredibly good mood. The conversation turned to yesterday's sakura shells they exchanged. Florentina's brother explained that since the prince adjusted his schedule for him, these shells would make a good topic for conversation, so he gave them to him. Florentina's father froze in shock, and she simply confirmed what had happened. Clenching her fist, she told her father that if he was going to give her to someone, he should at least choose the right person. Her father dramatically shouted in response, "What do you want in return? Money, magical items, lands, status, or even the throne?" Florentina panicked. "Can I really have something so valuable?" She stammers and says the shell was a gift. Suddenly it dawns on her, this must be a love talisman. Florentina explains that she managed to immediately buy premium coffee beans as soon as they were delivered. These coffees are from the best beans gathered in a high-level dungeon in a neighboring country. Someone says with a smile that for a noble tea party this is a real rarity. Here they serve coffee, not tea. Her brother holds the cup, breathes deeply, and enthusiastically notes what a pleasant aroma it has. But suddenly Florentina feels a creeping anxiety. Her brother notices and asks, "What's wrong?" Someone suggests trying it and Florentina smiles. "This will also go wonderfully with chocolate candies." Suddenly the brother, shocked, exclaims, "Did someone really sell coffee in the Eno dungeon?" Florentina confirms, yes, sometimes merchants appear in the dungeons, but most often trade takes place on the upper or upper middle levels where supplies are scarce. The brother leans closer, looks intently, and asks if she really means that it was better than that premium coffee. Florentina looks tense and the brother says that the coffee he drank there was quite good, although the place and time were off, but he thinks the boy's coffee was even tastier. Florentina thought how delicious and exquisite this coffee is. She still remembers how she drank coffee in an open-air dungeon. Later the brother asks if Florentina is free this afternoon, and she agrees. Then the brother lays out the search plan and loudly and decisively tells Florentina, "Circle the perimeter of the forest and take the eastern bay." Meanwhile, 3 other adventurers boldly set off into the forest. He will take on the rocky sections on the western side and ensure a safe zone. He gives a few more instructions. If you encounter other adventurers, ask if anyone has noticed anything strange in the dungeon. If you meet a merchant in the dungeon, ask him to come back with you. Even if you find nothing, everyone must gather at the meeting place in 3 hours. The group rushed through the dark corridors of the dungeon, while Florentina sped along at full speed in her magical boots like an arrow. Notice, during the day there is really almost no one here. If given full power, these magical boots would circle the island in less than 10 minutes, and at 20% power that's a little over 30. The group of adventurers noticed her and instantly scattered in surprise. Someone shouted, "That's Shinsen's older sister." Someone asked what she was doing here and Florentina mentally decided, "Just in case, I'll run 2 laps." The adventurers began discussing the dungeon merchant and recognized him. It was himself in a straw hat. Someone recalls seeing him last autumn, and the group happily shares how they buy snacks and water from him, but strangely, none of them ever bought coffee from him. They say he appears at the most needed moment when the throat dries up, as if he just floats in whenever he wants, completely unpredictably. Florentina realizes he did say he was not from this country, and suddenly everything makes sense. The conversation continues. Someone smiles and says he also said the fish here is tasty, and another adventurer adds probably he really got attached to this place. After all, this guy has been here for more than 6 months. They remember how at the first meeting he said he would move to another dungeon in about a month, and he is still hanging around here. After 3 hours, and the time flew by like a moment. Brother, with a shadow of disappointment in his voice, asks how the other searches went, and then says he talked to several people but found no merchant from the dungeon anywhere. The gathered group expected something completely different, but suddenly someone rejoiced and shouted that they have a great recipe for tasty whale meat, and someone else just quietly said, "Good." The team is delighted. The vegetables and mushrooms are already ready. Everything seems perfectly prepared, and someone couldn't resist. Are they making hot pot? Meanwhile, brother stands tense and turns over options in his head. The merchant is not on the beach, so the only places left to search are the forest or the safe zone. Finally, the group comes across the entrance to a cave on the southern side of the island, and inside, it seems, the core of the dungeon is also lurking. Brother nodded so that agreement flashed in his eyes and suggested postponing this until next time. Suddenly, it started pouring in the dungeon like from a bucket, and someone shouted, "Everyone here." Right at the entrance to the forest stands a bivouac. There they can take shelter. Florentina appears soaked to the bone, and someone anxiously asks if she and the instructor are okay. Brother complains indignantly, "This is unfair." The group breathes a sigh of relief. The towels are safe, and indeed it is raining in the dungeons. The brother remarks that the biggest thing Sagu ever got was a miss. Next in here, Florentina finds it. But she said she thought there would be dungeons here where it rains, and she recalls that in her great-uncle's house it always snowed. The atmosphere suddenly changed. Just a moment ago, there was only the sound of waves and the smell of the surf. Now all that reaches them is only rain and the smell of earth. Florentina smiles and admits that she somehow likes such moments. Meanwhile, someone pushing the water aside worries whether they have enough tea leaves. Florentina says she will boil some water and brew tea. The group sits together, and outside the window the rain pours and incessantly drums on the panes. Someone asks in despair, why did it start pouring so suddenly? An unexpected downpour covered the group, and it instantly exploded into a living chaos: screams, laughter, frantic running, and searching for shelter. Suddenly, a girl merchant appears from the dungeon, also soaked to the bone. She asks if they are also hiding from the rain, and the brother and Florentina froze in surprise. In the rain, the brother quietly said that the merchant really had people with whom he could have fun. He explains every time he saw her, she was alone. The merchant admits he was not mistaken, but someone notes that the brother's sister is a loner to the bone. The brother quietly and carefully asks the merchant woman to show her guild card just in case. He notices that it has no name, although the trading permit looks issued in their country, and asks her if she is from the kingdom of Gaspar. The merchant nodded. She is from Gaspar. After her stepfather died, she came to this country on a friend's advice. Meanwhile, the brother notices that none of the guild cards have any names, and someone immediately throws out, "What is her name?" Merchant woman introduced herself, Idiapi Honor. The brother suddenly realizes no one noticed the foreign guild card she was acting all along. And he gathers courage and asks what his sister's name is. He added almost in a whisper, "For now, it is necessary to contact the head of the capital, the guildmaster in Sagu, and the crown prince." Because everyone knew about them only from myths and legends, and no one could even imagine that one day they would really meet one. The brother felt his sister come too close to them. I wonder if they noticed it. Here he is, the idiot who is making coffee. He grind the grains and pour steaming hot water over them. She brings out a tray generously filled with cups, and next to it a plate with cookies. Apologizing for making everyone wait, she explained that she is serving 2 cups of today's recommended black blend and 3 lattes, and advised to take some sweets with the drinks. When everyone settled at the table, the brother exclaimed enthusiastically, "What a pleasant aroma." Even Idia herself does not hide her surprise and delight at how the coffee turned out. The company begins to savor it. Idia is delighted by the sweet taste. Others are pleasantly surprised because the coffee is actually tasty, although they expected it to be very bitter, and the brother agrees that it is good but a bit lacking in refinement. Florentina holds the cup to her palms and thinks, the coffee smells incredible, even despite the scent of the tide and rain. She still remembers that expensive coffee that the heir to the throne brewed for her. It was also incredibly tasty. Suddenly, the brother notices something and with surprise asks, "Is that the shell of Sakura's boy?" Florentina whispers to herself, does someone really like her deserve this? Everyone thanks Idi for the gift. Idi beams with joy and happy, calls Florentina older sister, clearly delighted by the reaction, and Florentina promises to cherish it like a treasure. The group continues to savor the coffee, and someone smiles and says that this is exactly the coffee she brews. As soon as someone asks for a refill, Idia reminds that refills are at their own expense, and the brother proudly adds that this is the best coffee he can remember. The scene changes abruptly. Finally, the long-awaited day of Florentina's meeting with the crown prince has arrived. She accompanies him to the summer dating camp, while she herself is deeply immersed in the Audit dungeon. 6 days have already passed. Florentina stands in an elegant dress. A maid adjusts her outfit. A delicate necklace sparkles on her neck. The crown prince greets her, but immediately apologizes. He says to Lady Tremel that an urgent matter has come up, and it's better to pretend the meeting never happened, although she worked so hard to find time for him. Florentina accepts his apology but admits that she knows it was extremely bold of her, and yet she has one more request. The brother complains that it might be inconvenient for a man to go alone, and the maid curiously asks if that guild mostly trades in women's items. Meanwhile, Roman stood nervously sweating, all on edge. It turned out that Florentina was wondering if he could accompany Roman. The crown prince calmly explains that Mr. Jailer, whom he introduced earlier, is already heading to Sheila's guild in the trading district to conduct an inspection. He would like Miss Tremble to become Roman's partner. The crown prince panics inside. He is sure she will refuse, and he feels to his bones asking her to skip the marriage interview just to pretend to be someone else's lover is too much. Meanwhile, Roman can hardly believe his ears. He wonders what his sister really thinks and whether she is serious at all, and the group tensely freezes when someone asks if this is really normal. Florentina is already planning shopping in her mind. She notices that Sheila's shop is just the place for the needed cosmetics and realizes that mana potions and igniters are almost finished, as are low-quality magic stones and spices. She still needs to buy a bunch of souvenirs, and she hesitates whether to take a bottle just in case. Roman and the air froze, and suddenly the truth dawned on them. She is thinking only about her purchases. Later, Florentina and her brother walk through the city, carrying a basket with bread. Brother apologizes to Florentina. The moment resurfaced in her memory when she finally got the chance to become the heir to the crown. Florentina responds a little confused. The brother, with a trembling voice, explains that the crown prince actually refused Florentina during the arranged marriage. They met a long time ago, and it turned out the prince said that Lady Tremble was very charming, but no spark of fate ignited for him. He openly refused, and the brothers were shocked by this revelation. Florentina says, "I am just substituting for the lady who cancelled at the last minute," and adds that they could have chosen a bunch of other people. She fell silent. She does not want her parents to pressure her again with a marriage proposal, and the brother begins to understand that his father, forcing him into this, turned out to be quite reckless. Florentina asks her brother to be by her side and to accompany the heir to the throne well during his summer vacation, promises to make sure he receives proper reward, and sincerely says that he is the only hero she can now turn to. The brother can hardly believe his ears and instantly blurts out, "Has Florentina finally decided to get married, and does she even like that crown prince?" Florentina firmly said no explanations and was already mentally making a list of those she would scold thoroughly as soon as she returned home. Meanwhile, the scene shifts and we find ourselves near the building of the trading company, Salas. In the shop, jewelry and accessories are displayed so impressively that the eyes wander. The employee smiles and says these are their most popular products, and all of them are made from materials extracted directly from the dungeon. Each treasures can be made into jewelry like these. Cosmetic oil has become a real hit among women. Roman gave it to Florentina, and Florentina smiled and decided that this oil would be a souvenir for everyone. Roman laughed loudly when he saw that among the ingredients was shark liver. Here it is. This product was first created at the request of an adventurer who was incredibly close to his alchemist. Someone says that image strategy is also important and, if asked, will explain everything well, and Florentina is already making a plan to get it for her great-aunt, for the guards, for the maids of the older sisters, and for people at school and teachers. Florentina, with a bitter smile, realizes that she will have to buy separately for her mother and grandmother. After all, things for the nobility are not placed on the shelf, and this product was invented about a year ago by an adventurer close to their alchemist. Florentina admits that she cannot afford anything too expensive for herself, and her brother immediately offers to treat her to something as a sign of gratitude since she is here. Here they can part ways, so they walk side by side, clutching shopping bags in their hands. The brother, with a note of surprise, notices the price is almost the same as that expensive makeup they talked about earlier. They just continue with their shopping. On the screen, the facade of a dried fish shop opens. Awnings stretch over counters overflowing with goods. Florentina says she wants to go there for shopping, and Roman's entire reaction instantly plays across his face. The seller in a headband spreads his arms wide and sincerely welcomes them to the dried fish shop. Roman and his brother strictly say that the supplies must be securely hidden. This is very important. She is his sister after all, so everything is quite clear. In the shop, dried fish hang from the ceiling and the shelves are bursting with jars. The seller says he has fish caught nearby, seaweed, shrimp, and various mollusks for food, for broth, and even as medicine, but he has nothing from the dungeons. The brother waved his hand inward and explained that behind the counter is a kitchen, so he advised Florentina to taste first and then buy. On the counter stood 2 glasses of broth. They said it was a mixture of bonito broth and sea cabbage. Everyone eagerly tastes samples of broth in the dried fish shop. The seller smilingly explains that it is enough to sprinkle dashi powder and put some vegetables in the pot, and in a few minutes a tasty stew will be ready, and he also recommends his secret dashi mix made from mixed mollusks and shrimp. The seller winked. "You can even fry it right here and eat immediately what you buy. You fry the dried fish and it becomes juicy and springy." He adds that the fish at the back is just for eating. It was salted and dried so it does not spoil for a long time. The seller sincerely thanks them for the purchase. Roman tells Florentina, "Take everything you want, but only as much as you can finish." Florentina shines with delight examining the selection. The seller explains that recently there has suddenly been an increase in sharks and mollusks grown in the dungeons. Prices are still high, but only the rich eat this. Because of this, ordinary seafood is almost not bought, so most of it is simply processed, for example, into dried fish. Roman asks when this happened. Florentina thinks for a moment and answers, "About a year ago." They say such a shortage began that dozens of people ended up with mana problems, and hospitals fell into complete panic. Meanwhile, the seller with a smile places the order on the plate: fried dried katana horse mackerel. Florentina smiled and praised her brother. He handles the Eastern chopsticks so skillfully that he easily picks up the meat spoons. And these forks just make this fish almost impossible to eat. Florentina took a bite and her face instantly lit up with incredible delight at the taste. She exclaims that it is incredibly tasty. The saltiness is barely noticeable, but the flavor is rich in umami, and most importantly, unlike jerky, the meat is truly tender, while Roman stands stunned, mentally unable to believe how such a taste can be achieved from ingredients that literally contain no mana. Suddenly, someone remembered the meat that her brother had chopped for them, and at that moment, a dramatic realization flashed across Roman's face. The voiceover whispers, "Right now the true essence of their cuisine is revealed." Cooking begins. They generously pour in the broth that was cooked earlier. Add some seasonings, fresh green onions, and crunchy sesame. Put this on top on some Eastern rice. The finished dish is announced as horse mackerel dashi chesu, and in a nice bowl you can see rice with finely torn fish and aromatic broth. Roman asks if there is real tea there. Idia also doubts that part about the tea, and someone explains that it is just broth, although they say in the East they really do add tea. Interested, Florentina asks if it is like simple risotto and immediately tries it for taste. Taste stunned her. Her eyes instantly opened wide in surprise. The seller, with a spark in his eyes, describes how the soft rice and fish meat easily slide down the throat together with the rich, aromatic broth. Then he asks if she just wants to loudly drink it all. Roman mumbles something about whether this suits a noble lady, and Florentina eagerly sips from the bowl. The seller apologizes embarrassedly and says that they do not sell rice here. Roman jumps up and exclaims that he will buy it first, but Florentina insists they still need to buy rice and Roman cannot take it first. The seller shows them the way to the import store on the main street. They sell rice there. Florentino jumped up in surprise. The shopkeeper sincerely thanked him personally for the purchase. On the street, Florentina and Idia suddenly run into the instructor. She greets them warmly and kindly. She smiled and said they had not seen each other for a long time, then, changing her tone, explained that she actually came to meet with a representative of the I rank and with Florentina for evaluation. Florentina responds to the greeting joyfully. It is clear she likes it, and the instructor smilingly asks if the two of them go shopping together. Idia smiled in response when Florentina joyfully called her name, and they went to a cozy specialized coffee shop, where the seller with a hair bun enthusiastically told about the wide selection of imported beans and immediately recognized the instructor as a regular customer who always takes the same blend. Florentina, again with excitement in her voice, calls Idia. Idia sincerely explained that since Florentina and her brother had previously bought her coffee, she decided to buy the rest of what she spent, and the instructor suggested going with her. Suddenly, the guild leader appears, all in uncontrollable, burning anger, insistently demanding to know why the instructor is wandering without permission. Nearby, someone jumped up at the appearance of the guildmaster. He attacked the instructor for taking Idia out by himself, then sharply barked at him to shut up because he had no idea what was happening in the dungeon right now. Florentina rushes to intervene and begs the guild master to at least listen to him, but someone else sharply orders the instructor to immediately return to the dungeon. Then the guildmaster punched the instructor in the face with his fist and shouted that he was an incompetent fool. The wounded instructor pressed his face with his hand, and the guildmaster did not stop his tirade, shouting that people like him are easy to replace, saying he was only the younger brother of the local lord. Someone shouted at the guildmaster, trying to calm the situation, and meanwhile Florentina calmly asked if a panic had started, to which the guildmaster reacted with surprise. Suddenly, Idia hurriedly apologizes for the trouble caused, says she will ask someone else to buy her coffee beans, and promises to return to the dungeon immediately. Idia tells Florentina that next time he will brew her incredibly tasty coffee, and adds that he will see her again in the dungeon. And Roman, with a tremor in his voice, sincerely apologizes to both women. Meanwhile, Idia and Roman step aside. Florentina and the instructor just stand as if enchanted, watching them walk away. A serious, thoughtful expression appears on Florentina's face, and she begins to review her entire situation in her mind. Her hobby is to go into dungeons alone, right? She thinks she should be happy about this path, but something whispers in her chest something is wrong here. When she heard from Idia the promise that they would meet again in the dungeon, she finally had a reason to wait. Strangely, after all, she always loved going into dungeons alone and doing everything her own way. Suddenly, Florentina realizes she simply hates it, as if something inside is slowly shrinking. She remembers how they wandered around shops all day and enjoyed delicious dishes. Honestly, it was truly fun, but since today they never entered the dungeon, there remained a feeling of incompleteness in the air. The instructor approaches and with hope in her voice asks if Florentina will keep her company for the rest of today's plans. Florentina apologizes and politely refuses. To protect Idia's smile from suspicious people from the Eno dungeon, action is needed. Someone reviews the dungeon schedule papers. These plans were originally set for the last day, but it seems better to move them to an earlier time. Meanwhile, someone suddenly called out to Florentina on the street, habitually calling her sister. The group travels together. Idia struggles to pull a huge cart loaded with supplies. Companions look curiously at their cargo, and Idia warns Abel they need to hurry. Buyers won't buy anything stale, so without a magic bag they will have to return immediately unless they have a lot of ice. Another adventurer notices that Sogo is borrowing magic bags for the lower anchors, and the male adventurer briskly explains that this is a paid rental and not a powerful option at all, but all because going to Sogo is just ridiculously far. Suddenly someone reacted with surprise to the check. A traveler with a bandage said he thought his sister and the instructor had plans today. Suddenly a hand raised an official document with royal seals, and a voice explained that this was an official order from the royal family and the headquarters of the association in the capital. Eno Dungeon and the Guild of Eno Dungeon Management. Now the audit will check this. The guild officials froze in shock. One of them, stammering, asked, "Are you seriously making claims about the appointment letter written by the heir to the throne himself?" It turned out that the Guild of Dungeon Novices of the royal capital was being audited, and they were clearly not ready for it. They say adventurers have already been warned, do not enter. The dungeon is currently unstable and dangerous. Florentina immediately pointed out the obvious. If the dungeon is so unstable that they even give warnings, shouldn't they dig into what caused it, or at least count how many adventurers actually entered? Instead, these guys just sit, flip through papers, and chat instead of getting to work and going into the dungeon themselves. After her sharp remark, one of them nervously twitched. It was clear he felt awkward. Some official man hurriedly tried to divert the conversation and asked if she was also participating in the audit. Someone muttered that she was probably a new little sister, and another suspiciously suggested that she was actually a guild employee, not an adventurer. Roman intervened and explained that she was a real adventurer and would be guarding him during the audit. He also named 3 others standing there, and someone reacted with surprise as if hearing this for the first time. Meanwhile, Idia and Florentina sighed with relief. Sparks flickered around them. All this time they thought Roman was some guild bigwig because they had spoken to him so casually before, but Roman coldly reminded, "You don't joke with Florentina. She is the daughter of a count, and careless words will be regretted much more than because of any guild boss." The conversation jumps to the boy in the straw hat whom they passed near the safe zone when they were returning. Someone asks if the leader said anything. The answer no, because he is just stalling for time. Then someone casually says, although a crush hasn't happened for years, the situation itself is still frightening. Florentina asks if you see him, give him her greetings, and meanwhile one of the adventurer men thinks that he is probably still in the dungeon. The story thoughtfully looks into Florentina's life. Her hobby is solitary trips into dungeons. She can enter the dungeons at any moment and enjoy them as she pleases. But the only reason someone would dare to do this is the management guild that keeps the dungeons in a stable condition. The group was descending the stairs, lively discussing the matter. It turned out that an anonymous message about poor management had arrived at the main office of the association in the royal capital, so with the king's permission, an inspector was sent to Sogo. From the very beginning, this was conceived as an audit. The conversation turned to the guildmaster. Compared to the guildmaster of Sogo, the one in Eno seemed simply arrogant, but the guildmaster is a real big shot. More precisely, their guild master was sent from the association's office, and apparently he has not yet finished his business. Suddenly someone remembers that instructor Roman is coming, and another already suggests just surrendering. The conversation delves into the intricacies of noble intrigues and the subtleties of dungeon management. For the lord, this is a real issue. Managing the dungeon determines the value of his estate because he is effectively risking the roof over his head. Reputation for these aristocrats is everything, so placing relatives in high guild positions to raise its status is quite common. The guildmaster said that he is the younger brother of the lord, so this was probably one of those appointments directly from the lord himself. Someone notes if some noble families arrange political marriages to become relatives, others go even further. They adopt those who know how to manage dungeons. Florentina complains that aristocrats have to deal with all this drama, and in the end, they get a noble daughter who loves to go into dungeons alone. Meanwhile, the group was moving through the dungeon while someone enthusiastically explained, It turns out the anomalies here are not only the crazy crowds of monsters, but also sudden fluctuations in their numbers and the appearance of mutants. There are also treasure chests and wandering beasts or even people, and all this is very important. Someone asks if this is really bad management. There hasn't been a crush yet, and another replies that it could be worse. One wrong move, and even in the simplest dungeon, there will be a complete disaster. I must report any serious changes to the country. Finally, the group reaches the central chamber of the dungeon core. One of the adventurers checks the detection devices and reports they are working properly, no contamination and no noticeable activation. Before them rises the massive core of the dungeon. Suddenly, Florentina freezes. The smell of coffee is in the air. Florentina scans the area and finds coffee, books, a pot, and traces of a campfire. Suddenly, she realizes that a girl lived here. The tent is still clean, but it is clear that it was set up quite a while ago. Inside, they are greeted by arranged furniture and other supplies. Then her brother suddenly recognized the carrying frame of Idia, the very one she wore when they met that day in the afternoon. Someone shouted to the older sister and the instructor, "Look." And suddenly it dawned on them he really was outside the safety zone. Florentina wonders if these unstable conditions really concern the weather. Meanwhile, the wind rose again, the sky darkens, and the waves become fierce. Suddenly someone wearing glasses hears a sound comes from beyond the cave. The noise made everyone turn around. One of the adventurers pointed to the sea behind. Suddenly someone hears a strange noise in the wind, and others immediately say to him, "Don't say such terrifying things." But as soon as they looked at the water, something incredibly large began to loom before them. Suddenly 2 giant sea creatures emerged from the ocean. Leviathans burst through the waves with incredible force, their giant bodies turning the water into wild chaos. Travelers froze in shock. One shouted, "What is that giant monster?" and someone else replied, "Leviathan. The highest-ranking monster in the entire dungeon, and there are 2 of them at once." Another adventurer explains tensely, "This is Leviathan. It swam all the way here to feed on monsters in the shallow water, and those gusts of wind that everyone feels are actually caused by its magic." Meanwhile, Florentina's brother, holding his breath, anxiously asks if she can handle the signal torch. In an instant, she prepares a signal rocket for evacuation. The shot is like an alarm signal. They retreat, and at the same time it warns other adventurers in the area about the need to evacuate. Suddenly, other signal rockets began to rise into the sky, not only Florentina's. Other adventurers also noticed the Leviathan, so the group decides to temporarily retreat to a safe zone, and 2 of them begin to heatedly discuss the situation. Someone asks why the strong monsters do not stay in the sea as they were ordered, and hears a grim answer: "There are too many of them now, and there is not enough food for everyone." The story about the dungeon ecosystem continues. Near the shore, adventurers packed up their bases and left somewhere far away, never returning, and those who were strong enough to catch fish in the open sea also left long ago. The dungeon suffered for a long time from meager catches, but when it received a certain blessing, the monster population sharply increased and it became generous again. Because of this, the fragile balance of the dungeon is collapsing. The number of apex species is rapidly growing. Adventurers chase low-level monsters around the island, while in the coastal waters, high-level creatures, thanks to the blessing, only multiply. Someone explains, in such numbers, infected and mutated Leviathans will appear here, and if panic starts during the crush, the monsters will instantly rush out of the dungeon. Suddenly, Florentina realizes it could have been even worse. The instructor notices something and shouts to everyone to look there. The group notices a figure at the very edge of the pier, stretching into the stormy ocean waters. Travelers rush to the pier, and Florentina's brother, overwhelmed with despair, shouts, "Why is she in the dungeon?" Someone shouts to her, "Go to the safe zone right now." Another voice yells that she is not allowed here, and at the end of the pier, Idia stands frozen with fear behind her. A huge Leviathan bursts out of the water. Its huge jaws are wide open. Florentina's brother shouted to her that the weak spot is the eyes, and impatiently asked if she could hit them. Florentina says about him, "Just do it," and then loudly declares to everyone that's how it is, so drop this exam for the rank. Meanwhile, other adventurers panic and shout for someone to do something, although one admits that he cannot. Florentina tends the bow. Her brother prepares a chain weapon behind her back. A giant head of Leviathan looms before them, and suddenly someone shouted, "Idia, quickly here." Water wildly bursts upward. Another voice screams hoarsely that it is breaking free again, and Idia just stands on the pier, paralyzed. Pure horror took over her face when Leviathan broke free from the water near the destroyed section. Leviathan's strike smashed everything to smithereens. Debris and wooden boards exploded into the air. Destruction throws Idia upward. She spins in the air, then with a loud splash falls into the turbulent water below. Travelers froze in horror. Someone shouted Idia's name, and another yelled that the pier was destroyed. The travelers review their gear. One hands over a rifle, another pulls out a magic pouch and bag, the third holds a cloak and a signal pistol, and someone sadly says that this is literally all they can work with. Florentina's brother shouted loudly to his sister. In this huge, dramatic shot, Florentina, like an arrow, sharply dives into the fierce whirlpool right where Idia went underwater. Meanwhile, at the guild meeting, a commotion arose. Someone shouts that Leviathan is devouring sharks around the island. Another adventurer calls it the real Leviathan and says this is serious trouble, and the instructor, cursing, calls Idia a freak and says everything is only getting worse. High in the dark waters of the dungeon, the massive Leviathan tears the ocean with its huge jaws, and debris and fragments fall around it. But let's return to Idia. After the pier was destroyed, she jumps into the water, and the deeper she sinks into the dark ocean, the stronger the memories overwhelm her. An old man on his deathbed, surrounded by people, whispers that she brews wonderful coffee and might one day take his place. Then he orders to go to the land beyond the sea where the hero lives, and when he dies, quietly leave the country so no one finds out, assuring that if it is her, then someday everything will definitely be all right. Florentina rushes through the underwater depths and notices Idia. Idia glows with joy that she was found so quickly. Florentina enhances the power of her magical boots and rises above the sea. In the dark waters around them, several Leviathans circle, and she and her brother rush to save Idia. Florentina suddenly grabs Idia and settles on the back of one of the huge Leviathans. Using it as a foothold, she feels it pulling her straight up to the surface. Even in magical boots, she is still swept away by the turbulent water current of another Leviathan spell. Nearby, her brother watches as Florentina performs a dangerous maneuver. Two Leviathans have surrounded them, their powerful blows push them through the water, and Florentina fights desperately. At first, it seems the blow is not that strong, but she cannot breathe. Then she realizes it is a deep cut. Her brother, overwhelmed with despair, reaches out to them and shouts to his sister, begging her to at least save Idia. Florentina's brother shouts that they cannot die, and at that moment, a protective barrier of magical black spheres grows around Florentina and Idia, drifting in the water. In the underground ocean, a huge whirlpool suddenly emerges. Florentina's brother shouts loudly, calling to his sister and Idia, and someone explodes. What the hell is this? Is it Leviathan magic? The traveler stands on the shore, looking puzzled. It seems the commotion is chasing something. Then one of the travelers notices that both Leviathans are moving away. Someone shouts, "Leviathan here." The group stands silently and watches as a huge fin cuts the water's surface and disappears into the distance. Florentina rushes riding on a giant orca, bursting through the water's surface. Splashes fly everywhere. With incredible force, the creature breaks forward, and her brother shouts for her to hold on tight, calling out for his older sister as the orca speeds through the waves. Meanwhile, people on the shore hold their breath and watch as the huge creature cuts through the water. Someone whispers that it is a hybrid monster bred in the deepest high-rank dungeon in the southern country, which has become the strongest being in the sea. One adventurer stares dumbfounded. What kind of new monster is this anyway? And another glances. It seems the sister has latched onto it. And then Idia recognizes it. Suddenly she understands. It is an orca. The explanation continues. They say it even destroyed the kraken, which heroes could not defeat. Supposedly once some hero tamed such a creature, and when he summoned it to another high-ranked dungeon, that being devoured everything around. But Florentina's brother protests vehemently. Something so powerful should not be hiding in the Eno dungeon. Someone confirms Idia really borrows this form. This is the power of the first people. They take on the appearance and abilities of creatures from another world. The travelers flounder in the water, completely exhausted and unable to swim to shore because the creature does not relent. Someone screams in despair. Meanwhile, Idia in the orca form relentlessly pursues them. Around her silhouette swirl strange creatures and energy. People whisper that it is that boy's ability, the power of the first people, and Florentina's brother notices, inside Idia. The combat power of one fighter is not that great, but someone exclaims indignantly, "Orcas are supposed to be the strongest in the sea, so why does she keep running away?" The brother calmly replies, "Orcas are strong because they hunt together in a pod." He looks through his telescope and calmly says, "No problem." The adventurers gather together and, with a sparkle in their eyes, declare, "We will just hunt and do it in groups." Someone shouted to everyone, "Give it your all. It doesn't matter if you're a novice or just some guy. This is a hunt for the Leviathan." Meanwhile, the brother anxiously asks if his older sister really left almost all her things, and someone answers, yes. Then one of the adventurers suggests using the monsters swimming ahead to push the Leviathan to drive it into a bay where there is much more land underfoot. These creatures are actually luring them that way. The orca rushes over the waves, and Florentina and Idia sit on its back. But Idia begins to worry. If this continues, the Leviathans will catch them, and with Florentina nearby, she can neither dive deep nor speed up. Someone shouts in despair. The Leviathans are still chasing them. Suddenly, the brother sharply called out to Idia, "Do you hear me? If you hear me, jump once." Then, his voice breaking, he shouts to his sister, "Hold on tight." The orca's fin cuts into the water, and the brother loudly shouts that they are moving out. Suddenly, the orca leapt into the air, making a stunning jump out of the water. One of the adventurers suddenly shouted that it really took off, and someone else explained that orcas have very sharp hearing, and supposedly the hero who defeated the kraken used some magical device that emitted sound waves underwater to train the orcas. Meanwhile, the brother urgently gives orders through the communication device. Idia straight into the bay on the western side of the island, swim at full speed and break away from the Leviathan. One of the adventurers asks if he can use the sister's magical communication device without permission, saying it is insanely expensive. The brother only shouts back that if anything breaks, he will charge the guild for the repair. Meanwhile, Florentina clings to the back of the orca, rushing through the water, and shouts to Idia. She won't be able to gain speed if she doesn't dive, but then she won't be able to breathe. Her brother sharply replies over the radio, "Idiot, don't worry about your sister." Then he sharply points to the fact that he is sitting on Idia's back. A close-up of Florentina's face. Despite the danger, she smiles widely, and the brother's voice continues. She is a brave, simple sister who even enjoys coffee in a dangerous dungeon. Small flashback reveals young Florentina and Idia. They are together in a dungeon. The brother shouts at Idia at full volume, "Breathe in," and Florentina calls out and dives. The orca suddenly dives beneath the surface. Florentina clings with all her might. Two Leviathans follow them into the depths, their giant bodies cutting through the water. On the shore, the travelers, holding their breath, watch the chase. Suddenly, one breaks ahead. Another, as expected, slows down. When Idia speeds up, one of the Leviathans stands guard, and someone shouts, "Run to the bay while you still can." Brother gives urgent instructions through the device. As soon as they enter the bay, Idia must break and pull the Leviathan as close as possible, and from this trio, she needs to dive under the first two. The orca leaps upward with an incredible jump, and around spreads the command, "Jump as high as you can." Meanwhile, the Leviathan chases them to the docks. The adventurers shout that it is already approaching. It slipped under the pier. The pier itself shook from the massive creature rushing beneath it, and they loudly give instructions to the last third dock. Suddenly, the Leviathan bursts upward between the piers in a stunning breakthrough. Wall of water covers everything around. In the distance, the orca with Florentina emerges, and the adventurers line up along the wooden structures on both sides. Someone now shouts a command. The giant creature crashes with a roar into the prepared nets. The trap works, and the Leviathan gets tangled in the nets stretched across the bay. The Leviathan wildly struggles in the nets, its giant body tense on the ropes. The net still holds, but each jerk sows complete chaos. Desperate travelers cling to the nets. Someone calls Frank, others shout, "Big sister." The group responds, "Hold tight and don't let it sway. Under no circumstances allow it to break free and return to the sea." Hands white from tension on the ropes, everyone fights to tame this legendary monster. Florentina strikes with an elongated spur. The tip pierces right into the Leviathan's eye. Her face is tense and focused, wet with ocean water. She let out a cry, both eyes destroyed. That is the core of the Leviathan's magical control. So the spell that made the scales impenetrable must disappear, and the adventurers below see her successful strike at the creature's weak point. Florentina's brother shouted exactly as he taught her. The command echoes, "Aim for the temple." Standing close, Florentina thrusts the spear straight into the Leviathan's skull. Brain shattered into pieces. The weapon plunged deep into the creature's head. A critical strike hit the target directly. Meanwhile, below, other adventurers collectively attack the Leviathan, entangled in nets. Blow after blow hit several vital points. While the bound lay helpless, the assault continues. The guild is being destroyed. When several adventurers aim at the Leviathan's respiratory organs, their weapons cut and pierce the guild's vulnerable structures. Florentina's brother shouts that the finale is near. One adventurer tightly grips the weapon and strikes, destroying the spine. The coordinated team strikes the Leviathan's spine, hitting all three critical weak spots in turn. The Leviathan fiercely breaks free from the nets, while the adventurers firmly hold positions on the piers. Meanwhile, the bald instructor in sunglasses quietly smiled and noted that it was a flawless nerve disablement. Then another participant in the adventure asks if those 2 strikes after Florentina's first hit were really necessary. Someone replies that the taste and shelf life of meat are completely different. It all depends on the method. Right by the water. The traveler desperately struggles and shouts, asking someone to reach out a hand to him. Meanwhile, others say that another Leviathan, lurking at the entrance to the bay, surfaced to look at those 2. They decide not to chase it too far and postpone the pursuit to another day. Suddenly, a woman screams desperately to be pulled up immediately, and a man in a bandana with a giraffe pattern panics and says he has prosthetic legs. As if heavy weights were tied to both his legs, someone sees a guild boy rapidly sinking, and bubbles rise from the depths. Florentina drowns along with the adventurers struggling in a chaotic fight around her, and everyone understands. They must somehow break to the surface, and she panics, asking herself where is her magic. Boots failed, and she cannot save everyone by her strength alone. Idia surfaced near the pier in the form of an orca, and Florentina and her brother were visible on the rocks behind. As if suddenly a memory surfaces long ago. When the world was just born, the first creature had nothing except precious stones scattered everywhere. In the memory, 2 young figures are seen sitting together, reading and studying old stories. The memory unfolds further. The world gave each stone a name. The first gently picked up the precious stones with both hands, thus they collected all the jewelry. One young voice, full of admiration, whispered, "What a beautiful stone." But a dark eye watches from the shadow. In the present Idia, a huge orca bursts out of the water, carrying Florentina and her brother on its back. Travelers on the pier froze in shock before the giant figure. Someone understands. This boy is much more than he seems. Meanwhile, others shout not to attack. This is not an enemy. Voices call for Sis and the instructor, reacting fearfully to the huge hand that suddenly appeared. The giant form of Idia's orca bursts into the air with colossal force, scattering people in all directions as they hurriedly jump back. Someone says that Idia overdid the transformation and completely exhausted her strength, and the dark-haired brother and the blonde adventurer in shock recognize this huge creature, writhing wildly, is also Idia. Someone frantically calls for help, but another voice quietly says that this is actually good. The scene shifts to the sea surface. Huge circles spread across the water near the pier, waves rock everything around, and someone desperately shouts. Suddenly, a memory surfaces. A figure in a hat stands by the door next to a tombstone and, addressing Idia in a serious tone, strictly orders her to listen. If they die, Idia must immediately leave this country. The memory lingers. The voice adds that someday, inevitably, not as one of the people who were from the beginning, everything will change. But then suddenly Idia appears cheerful, with a cup of coffee in her hands, and smiling that innocent smile, says how delicious her coffee is. The giant silhouette of Idia's face seems to whisper that everything will be fine with her. It has always been that way. In the background, a tombstone stands silently and motionlessly, and Florentina, having returned to the present, sits alone on something like a boat or platform, holding a weapon and quietly pondering. The memory responds again. Someone whispers to Idia that she will meet the one who truly needs her. Florentina lowers her gaze to the weapon and absorbs these words. Meanwhile, on the surface, someone gasping whispers that they managed to overthrow Leviathan, who was chasing them, but another one broke free and rushed into the open sea. Someone quietly whispers to them to calm down, "Don't worry." Then another voice, full of anxiety, asks about everyone else and what happened to Leviathan. Falling to CIS, overwhelmed with anxiety. Suddenly, a man with a giraffe print bandage roared in pain through his leg. He was sitting on the pier, other adventurers were bustling around, and his prosthesis was clearly broken or completely missing. Idia in her dark form repeatedly apologized, saying it was her fault and that she was so sorry. But someone reassures, everyone is fine, only the sister, and even then it seems nothing serious, because from the very beginning she had an artificial leg. She never had a real one anyway. Florentina's brother looks disappointed and quietly says, "That's how it is." Someone says they are sorry. Supposedly, they couldn't do it. They say the guild leader ordered them to watch and drive out Leviathan, who multiplied because of them. The dark figure Idia looks around thoughtfully and admits with regret. In the end, she was not destined to do what she wanted, but no matter how hard she tried, she cannot break away from the dungeon because she was one of the first. She passionately dreamed of traveling to different places so that as many people as possible could enjoy her coffee, and one day open her own coffee shop like her father-in-law's. That was her dream. Florentina reaches out her hand to Idia and speaks. Florentina looked at Idia with all seriousness and said to her, "Don't forget to do what you love. He really needs to value and protect that." Florentina presses that dark form to herself, utters these words, and then sincerely talks about her feelings. She goes to the dungeon because she likes it and because it's fun. She explores, hunts, loves camping, and such things. Idia listens and Florentina continues. She says she values every moment spent doing what she loves. Florentina admits that she herself does not understand why she cannot stay away from the dungeon. She came across something new and immediately loved it. That is why she came to the Eno dungeon. She opens her palm before Idi coins or tokens shine in it and says she does not want her to give up that dream. Suddenly Idia in her dark form handed them the usual cup of coffee. The link can be found in the description. Florentina says you will get the black one. Meanwhile, on the ground, a group is noisily chatting about orders. Florentina's brother says he will take the same. Someone asks for café au lait. Another person adds that they will take it too, and someone else suggests trying the black one. The brother says if Idia is making it, everything will be fine with him. The dark figure of Idia bursts into tears from emotion and thanks them, and Florentina tells her that she is preparing delicious coffee. On the pier, a giant corpse of Leviathan adventurers bustle around, and the brother sadly says, "It's a pity his sister left yesterday back to the capital. She said she has other plans." He desperately wanted her to taste that cup of coffee. Meanwhile, in the hood, a traveler announces that they have finally reached the meat section of the Leviathan disassembly. The conversation turned back to the guild's problems, and someone indignantly blurted out, "Since we arrived in Eno, we haven't seen a single guild member in the dungeon. They caught such a big prey, and not a single guild member was anywhere nearby." Another adventurer noticed that former guild members also helped with the fishing, and old workers often dropped by to see what was going on. Suddenly, someone sharply demands an explanation from the guildmaster that will satisfy everyone, and sternly asks if he understands what will happen if he cannot provide it. In the guild office, the brother stands with papers in his hands and says that most have already been investigated. He tells in order 2 years ago the guildmaster, who had served here for years, died of illness, and the younger brother of the lord took his place. As soon as he settled into the position, he didn't even have time to blink. Immediately clashes with adventurers and colleagues began. The brother explains in detail the problems with the standards for purchasing dungeon goods. They are raising the so-called national recommended standards. In the world of drift, items without magic are just junk. Their freshness will fade and they won't just become cheaper. No one will buy them at all. Someone says it's perfectly normal if they want to sell quality dungeon items. What's the problem? But they are answered, then local adventurers won't be able to make a living. Last spring, guild workers who could no longer tolerate it simply quit en masse. A whole team left at once, and higher-ups dismissed one by one those who tried to stand up for the adventurers. Essentially, they are cleaning out everyone who resisted. Only those drowned in debt and unable to leave remain, or those who have no adventurer license at all. These were people who had no other choice. Meanwhile, after the departure of skilled adventurers and competent dungeon overseers, the dungeon slowly lost balance due to a lack of mana flowing through it. Traps triggered more often and destruction accumulated. Someone quietly whispered, "What a pity they didn't inform either the authorities or the guild headquarters back then. Maybe it wouldn't have become so bad." And then Idia appeared. As soon as she began to visit the dungeon more often, the Enote dungeon came back to life. Monsters swarmed like mad and blessings turned into abundant loot. Guild members immediately realized, this girl has a power that can change everything. Later, Idia in her dark form sits on a crystalline ledge in the dungeon and reveals the nature of the people of the beginning. These are beings loved by the dungeon itself, only they are here, and monsters with mana begin to grow on their own. They even say that treasure chests appear all over the district and many travelers and beasts are found. But the point is that because of this power, many decided from the very beginning to bind people to the dungeon, effectively keeping them captive there. Someone says if Idia is not let in, no one will get hurt, right? And adds that the guild left her to deal with it alone, blaming her for the Leviathans beginning to multiply, and then directly addresses the one who revealed Idia's true nature and challenges him. Brother Florentini admits in a simple tone, if Idia stays for half a year, then that is already her own problem, and Idia in dark attire nervously replies that she just thought it would cause trouble. He does not back down, stubbornly saying that broken balance cannot be restored except by bringing people there from the very beginning. Meanwhile, in the guild office, Brother Florentini stands with papers and addresses the guildmaster, firmly saying that as the head of the organization managing the dungeons, he has seriously failed his duties. Guildmaster decisively demands an answer. Will he be removed from his position and expelled from the guild? The man with the document said coldly, "I really don't care." Then Brother Florentini quietly confessed, if because of this he dismissed Guildmaster Idio, he would probably carry this burden for his whole life. The audit result was announced. Idia in dark attire sweats nervously. Brother Florentini instead suggests calling it mandatory mentorship. The Guildmaster reacts irritably to this term. Someone, sighing gloomily, seriously notes that it came to this because of the Guildmaster's mistakes. Suddenly, the guild doors exploded with a loud crack, and an official announced that from today the Dungeon Management Guild of Ino was occupied by the Adventurers Support Association of the Royal Capital. A female representative stepped forward and decisively declared that from now on the guild would follow their orders and instructions, and no one objected to acting without permission. But the one with the weapon only smiles and says, "We really have nothing to complain about, we were captured." The male official asks Lady Tribute to keep everything decent. Lady replies that she still needs to talk with the guildmaster, and someone froze in shock. Here the heir to the throne appears on the doorstep, Wilfried. The scene shifts to the evidence on the screen appear the statement of a young lady who temporarily lived in the city, and a necklace. In the statement, people say they witnessed the guild master trying to use violence against a woman right in the middle of the city, and someone adds that she was extremely outraged. Then the Crown Prince suddenly reveals, the statement is from Lady Florentina G. Trenmel. Someone recognized the surname Trenmel, and the Crown Prince immediately declared that the Lord wants to sever ties with the guild master immediately. The guild master falls to his knees on the floor, and the heir to the throne adds that there is no need to worry. The guild master must know, if he decides to leave there will be no place for him anywhere. Their Lady Tribut sharply tells the guild master, "Don't think you can step away from affairs just because you have reached retirement." She and her partner declare that they will give him strict and full instructions, and Lady Tribut adds, so that he does not run away, they will be thorough and very vigilant. Someone nervously whispered that they do not want to have problems because of labor laws. Meanwhile, people begin to come alive, and the Crown Prince says, "Well then." He said that he also came for advice. He wanted to discuss one matter with them. Someone calls her Lady Idia, and she instantly appears in the darkness, white braided braids and huge white eyes on a black face. Florentina simply adores exploring dungeons all alone. After everything that happened in the Eno dungeon, the group finally returned to the royal capital. She decided to spend the night again in the familiar Segat dungeon after a long separation, and from the lowest level, from the safe zone, Enchan's voice suddenly sounded. Greeted all the ladies and gentlemen. Florentina loudly announced, "From now on begins the battle for souvenirs of the Roman instructor," and Idia stands right behind her. But suddenly Florentina realized that she had accidentally stumbled upon some strange event. She sincerely hoped to just relax and enjoy solitude. She even entered the same place and, looking at the item board, felt that most of them were already familiar to her. Meanwhile, two people proudly display local products, cosmetics from Sheila's trading company and soup base from dried goods shop. The main attraction is a huge magical stone that draws attention, but someone raises eyebrows. Is this the real Leviathan stone, and can such a thing even be considered a souvenir? And then they show the real prize, a boat piled with sashimi, and sashimi from Leviathan. Someone in panic says they must pass this round, but was late for the disassembly and did not manage to take any meat. The disassembly won't be done in time. Asks the sister to just pay cash and promises to settle later. Someone replies to stop talking such nonsense and go home. Florentina announced the event with a smile. They will all compete for this prize, and the new guild merch will go on sale next week. This is a fragment from Enchan. Various adventurers passionately discuss the competition. Someone complains that everything has become too bland and suggests hunting monsters or diving into magic instead. Others pick up on this. There should be more adventures, like tough fights or something similar, and someone asks, where has the excitement that was before gone? Florentina announced that as soon as everything is ready, everyone will be able to choose one souvenir to their taste. Someone suspiciously asked if this is just a way to extract money from people, and complained that if someone spoils something, they should buy a new one for 3 gold. Then Florentina gives the start. The competition begins. The crowd froze in anticipation. Someone asks everyone to focus, but honestly there is almost no excitement. They show a cardboard figure of Anchan. Florentina tensely concentrates on the task on the Leviathan sashimi boat. She considers herself unskilled, but if she imagines it as caring for a rifle, she will probably manage. Suddenly Florentina's brother appears and asks how she feels, and Idia cheerfully greets him, saying it seems like an eternity has passed since she last saw her older sister. Loudly like a commander, a male adventurer announces that he has finished and authoritatively demands that the magic stone be given to him. Someone says they bought items, another agrees that they did too, and the dark-haired traveler meanwhile declares that she will take the most expensive cosmetics because why not, right? Others noticed the real supports turned out to be surprisingly skillful. The magic stone became just a big rock because the girls smashed it and sucked out all the mana, and someone even grabbed a shark. Everyone is bustling. Someone hurriedly grabs the dark fin and rummages through all the dry supplies. Another chooses the acute accessory and cosmetics for their mother, and someone else notices that there is almost no mana left in the magic stone and says they will also take dried fish. People begin to react to the sashimi boat, stunned that the taste in the mouth is worth 5,000 gold. It simply melts on the tongue. Florentina throws her brother a short "all right." The male traveler says that he is also done, and suddenly someone notices they still have souvenirs left and asks, "What is wrong here?" To the right, her brother explains that they still have bones and skin that they took from Leviathan, but the tastiest was the fresh catch eaten immediately after cleaning, while another adventurer notes that this can hardly be considered the next event. In the lower panel, you can see almost everything is already stuffed into the magic bag. Someone shouted that since there are no souvenirs left, it's time to wrap up, and another person picked up that at the beginning there was advertising and a sketch section. Suddenly, Florentina stumbles upon a stack of papers among the things. The guild announced, "We are starting the main event, the newcomers' reception evening," and someone skeptically shouted, "Why did these new recruits appear exactly at this time of year?" Suddenly, Idia emerges from the darkness in her dark form with white braided hair and introduced herself. "Nice to meet you. I started working at the Sagu Management Guild." As soon as she appears, Florentina and the guild employee instantly react. Crown Prince says that he advised Idia to go work for Sagu. They couldn't just leave her in the Eno dungeon. Idia admits that her special skill is brewing coffee, and she dreams of someday standing in the safe zone of the guild's coffee shop serving coffee and drinks. Various adventurers began discussing Idia's past. Some doubted whether that boy was really one of the first people and feared what would happen if monsters became stronger, while others meanwhile feared that strange people would appear because of the treasure chest who would come only for her. Then Florentina shouted at the instructor, sharply stating that she would not dive into dungeons all day every day, like in the Eno dungeon. The male adventurer with a drink recalls with a smile, once there were a bunch of first people in Sagu. And suddenly panic exploded, complete chaos. He says that back then treasure chests were just an unattainable dream. After all, the monsters and mana remained the same as before, no change at all. He smiled and lightened the atmosphere as if to say everything is fine. Someone suddenly exclaimed that finally the long-awaited menu at the joint meeting had arrived. Another person noted that Sagu was not touched by the blessing of the first people, so its stability is partially explained. And yet another added that Idia's ability to transform was incredible, but even then people barely gathered, so Sagu had to help. It turned out that these were seafood dishes that Odin prepared from a bunch of sharks from the Eno dungeon. Florentina looks at the hot pot and says that it is blazing but looks so appetizing that you want to eat immediately, and various adventurers begin enthusiastically praising the dishes. The humpin is fluffy, the chikwa is pleasant, the taste and aroma of the fish are tightly absorbed into the broth and fish cutlets, the stuffed cabbage rolls are tasty, and the daikon absorbed all the flavor. And then someone says, in Sagu they catch a lot of cranserpent meat, and sometimes specimens the size of a Leviathan appear. Another traveler enthusiastically says that he is tasting something like meat inside cabbage for the first time, and it is incredibly juicy. Dia winked and said, "It's just super tasty." Florentina enthusiastically tells Idia that her sister fillets masterfully and you must somehow see it. She adds that the meat can be either boiled or grilled. Idia, surprised, says that there is something inside. Finally, everyone ate. A man with a giraffe headband says, "I am so full," and another adds, "It was delicious." Then Idia offers Florentina coffee after the meal and asks, "Do you want some?" "I can already drink it," says the traveler, and Florentina replies, "This is trial coffee." And the guild worker calls her older sister. Florentina quietly freezes in thought. Her hobby is to go through dungeons alone. Even when she challenges a new dungeon, she eventually still returns to what she is used to. She enthusiastically flips through brochures about dungeons, and people around her keep offering her coffee. A hand raises a coffee coupon, 1 free cup of her favorite coffee. "Usual for me," says Florentina. Iddy. Someone confirms the order, and Iddy says it is recommended black coffee. The scene changes and we see a group lively communicating. Florentina met a new friend, felt new joy, and gained new experience in the dungeon. Her favorite hobby becomes brighter every day. New little things join it, which she is delighted with. She walks with a tray of coffee, and Florentina sits there with a drink. Eyes closed, a smile on her lips as if complete bliss. Meanwhile, with new companions joining the team, the Sagoda dungeon becomes an even more favorite place for everyone. Honestly, it is true pleasure.